It's 3 and Out here on this Wednesday. Kevin Thomas, Ben Troop, glad you're with us all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. A lot to get to here on the show. Drew Cronic, Mercer head coach, will join us. Had their season opener this past week, big 69-0 win. They take a slight step up in competition this week, Ben, as they take on the Alabama Crimson Tide. So we'll talk to Drew Cronic about that. They, of course, one of those teams at the FCS level, played a little bit in the fall, played a little bit in the spring. Now back with everybody else playing a full schedule here this fall. So he will join us here on the program. We'll also hear from Josh Pate with the Late Kick with Josh Pate, 247 Sports. We'll talk some college football with him coming up in the final hour of the show as well. So plenty to get to. Hit us up on Twitter at Pigskin Radio. We're also streaming live, ESPNCoastal.com. You can also catch us on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, streaming the show live there as well. We encourage you to join us. Leave us a comment there as well. A lot of things to get to here right out of the gate. Some quick topics. One we brought up a little bit yesterday. It was a big focal point from at least broadcasting crews, I thought, during the first 5 days of college football from last week. And that was the targeting. How many guys were getting called for it? How many guys were getting ejected for it? How many guys were missing significant time from either the rest of the game or a game next week, which has nothing to do with the game at hand? And how do you fix it? Because I don't think targeting is going away. We're in an era where everybody's obviously concerned about player safety. You could say, well, we were concerned about player safety before. I don't know if we were in a way like this, where every little thing, hey, there's a bunch of shoulder injuries. Well, maybe we need to figure out but obviously targeting head, CTE stuff, that is at the first forefront of everybody's mind. So I don't think you're going to get rid of targeting, but are we calling it too much, or do we just need to change the way it's being called at the end of the day?
I do think we need to err on the side of caution, Kevin, but it's becoming ridiculous. How many was it? Four targeting calls and ejections in the Ole Miss, Louisville game. Look, I understand that, everybody. This is what happens. Everybody wants to get bigger. Everybody wants to be faster. Everybody wants to be stronger. The problem is, this is when replay doesn't help, because we're looking at this thing slowed down. That's not how fast it happened in real time. Now, the defenseless player, I can understand that. But it's like driving around with no windshield wipers and then hope it doesn't rain. No, we got on helmets. Helmets are gonna collide. You know who helmets collide every single play? That would be offensive lineman, the defensive lineman. They're colliding heads every single play. But what happens is when we see a receiver get hit, unfortunately, safeties, linebackers, defensive players hit hard. But to work as hard as you work, to only have 12, 13 opportunities a year to have it taken away from you in the first quarter because of targeting, how can you judge intent? Like, how do you know that player was targeting him, or are they just trying to separate him from that pigskin? So I do agree, Kevin. I do understand why they're doing it, but it's almost like to a point to where like you're trying to make a point. Because what you're really doing is you're making players slow down. Hey, I'm not going to go as hard as I would have gone because I don't want to hit a guy, quote, too hard. What's the linebacker name for Clemson? He got kicked out of both college football playoff, semifinal game because of a hit. And I understand that sometimes it's going to happen, but are we punishing players from being football players? Because that's what it looks like. You're being punished from being a football player. Now, if it's a defensive player and you just go helmet to helmet, that's different. But these games mean too much. These players put in too much to have these striped shirts out, these zebras out there deciding these calls. I understand, but I also don't get why it's so widespread. It's almost like they got a quota to meet. Hey man, we ain't had nobody get thrown out yet, so make sure. So I don't think it's good for the game because, Kevin, I do agree. It's all about the players. It's all about player safety. But unfortunately, sometimes you're gonna get hit hard. Like you're gonna get helmet to helmets are almost unavoidable. And people go, well, they can see the guy, he can see the guy he's hit. Yeah, but did you see the guy he hit duck his head? Forget the guy who hit him, the guy he hit, he ducked, which means that because he was trying to go. So I understand what they're trying to do, but I just think that college is the wrong place to be trying to make that. Guys don't get kicked out like that in the NFL. And they get paid to play. So yeah, I understand they gotta do better.
I just think, again, I don't mind even calling targeting. I just think the fact that you're eliminating a guy from a game for it is a little much, where you're affecting the. I mean, we always talk all the time. Hey, I don't want officiating crews affecting the outcome of the game in terms of I don't want a bad call to determine the outcome of the game. I don't want a missed call to determine. Okay, that's fine. Well, how about we not eject players for football plays, as you said, Ben, for football plays that in real speed, you brace for impact. If you're about to get tackled, sometimes you lower your head and you take one. I don't have a problem with the targeting call. I think it's when you eliminate guys from the game. And again, we've seen it time and time again. We'll have defensive players, Ben, play 3+ quarters, 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter. They haven't had a penalty called on them all game. You have some incidental contact, targeting, ejection, and now they can't play next week in the first half. And I think that's, to me, where it goes a little bit overboard. Now, the reason I think you can do this is because, again, football's somewhat to blame for this, because we did go through an era where we glorified the big hit, and every highlight was a dude getting knocked out or getting spun around or knocked off his feet and, coming up high, just clipping dudes up by their head and their shoulders. Okay, we glorified that. Now we're trying to take that away. But we have taken it away to the point where I think 9 times out of 10, that's not how kids and guys playing football now are operating. You may have some random guys that maybe do some of that, but I think by and large, Ben, just from talking with you and seeing how someone who's been in the league interacts, if a guy's out there headhunting, if he's got that reputation versus a guy who's just making a play and it happened to happen. I would imagine in all of your time playing football, if somebody's trying to really come after you and cause you harm versus this guy's just trying to hit hard and make a football play on me. And maybe, it got a little low or he got a little high around the head and it was incidental versus this guy I know is coming to knock me out regardless. I think we've gotten away from a lot of that because players are aware of head and neck injuries, that the intentional spearing and things, that has come way down. A lot of it seems to be just inadvertent, unintentional targeting where the two helmets come together and a guy gets tossed out of the game for it. And offensive players are not dumb. Ben, I mean, you mean to tell me in all your time playing, if this was a rule when you played, hey, if I lower my head a little bit, I might draw an extra 15.
True indeed.
I mean, you don't think offensive players think like that? Of course they do.
Well, yeah. Look, we're talking about the exception. Like when you see all these targeted calls, it makes it seem as if, Kevin, it was like this widespread. All these, how many weekends can you go without? And I said, okay, with all the games that was played, how many targeting calls was called? Oh, it was about 5 or 6. So out of all the games, targeting in football is like getting hit with a pitch. Guys get hit with pitches. It's not widespread. It's not happening every game. You know why? Because pitches will get thrown out. Because teams won't have anybody to go out there and play with. So I do get it, but you don't kick them out the game. I mean, back when I played, and I'm not that, this was the greatest era of football. No, a part of football is how much pain can you endure? Like sometimes you don't even know how good of a player you are until you really get hit hard. So when you see a player land on the ground, sometimes he ain't hurt. Sometimes he just gathering his thoughts like, oh my freaking God, he just knocked my block off. And the problem is, if you ever look at the player that got hit, when he comes to, he's looking around saying, wait a minute, they threw him out? Because sometimes when you're gonna get hit hard, it is unavoidable. I'm just saying, when you play a certain sport, it's brutal. Football is not a contact sport. It's a collision sport. People are out there colliding, and sometimes it's a real big boom. And sometimes, now, if the guy that got hit didn't have a helmet on, I get it. But both of them got on helmets. And sometimes you're going to get hit hard. I played against, John Lynch. I played against Ed Reed and Troy Polamalu, Bob Sanders. They would knock you all out. They would knock your whole block off. So I don't know, Kevin. I understand, like I said, I understand what they're trying to do, but you sending the wrong message. Because if you don't think those offensive players are saying, hey, coach, players jumping up, tapping themselves on the head, saying, coach, ref, you need to watch that. The NCAA is in a very, very, peculiar situation, because if they keep on calling them, they're gonna say, and that opposing team say, okay, well, who do we got to play with now? You're getting when I'm gonna have a D lineman at safety. You think guys out there getting hit? All right. So I just think that it's too much, Kevin, because if it's blatant, kick them out. But if it's football, unsportsmanlike conduct, 15 yards. Don't kick the player out the game, though.
And again, I know, just talking with Christian, he disagrees with kind of my assessment on it. He's like, look, by now everybody knows what the rule is. Tackle with your head up, don't lower your head, and you won't get tossed. And you won't get. And I understand that to a degree, but again, I think it happens so fast, and by and large, you're not seeing it done in an intentional manner anymore. Are there a few times where you just see a guy leave his feet, and that head goes right at him like you're a missile? Yeah, that happens. And by all means, you can probably say if he does that, he's intent. But when you're going down for a tackle and the guy is crouched down and the helmet's touched, that's, to me, you shouldn't be out of the game for that. So I believe the way we saw it in the first week, Ben, this is going to be a thing that I think continues throughout the season. There may be some momentum for changing the rule to where it's not an automatic ejection, but hey, you can still call the penalty. It's just not an automatic, hey, you're gone. Because as you said, a couple of those in a quarter, and you can lose your entire secondary pretty quick. If you're
and your linebackers. Look, sometimes plays happen extremely fast. Kevin, it's like watching somebody throw a fastball from TV. It ain't the same as being right there. You're like, dude, I don't think I understand how fast this ball is moving because you're right there. I mean, you turn your head and it's there. That's how fast things happen. If a guy can run 40 yards in 4.3, that's how fast things are happening. Coming from a person who's gotten knocked the hell out, you don't remember it anyway. I've gotten knocked out. I remember running down on kickoff. I remember getting hit, and I remember trying to stay up, and I remember waking up with a nice little ball cap I got on now. Somebody yelling my name. So don't feel bad for the guy that got hit. He don't remember it anyway. All he remembers is to watch out for that freight train.
We'll see. Also, some other news and notes. Apparently, the Red Box Bowl has been canceled. That was going to be the 16 for the Pac-12 versus the 17 for the Big Ten. We didn't need to see that. It's good. Less bowl games. I'm standing by that.
What about the gift cards?
Do I get the gift cards?
So hold on. So would you want it, Kevin, if you got the gift card?
Yeah, I don't get gift cards. It can go bye-bye. It's fine with me. We'll come back. We got more to come. Drew Cronic going to join us here in hour number 1 as well. And certainly we like to overreact, but probably not more so than after week 1. We'll get to that when we return. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you back, 3 and Out on this Wednesday. Drew Cronic, head football coach at Mercer, going to join us coming up in just a little bit. But Ben, it has been one whole week of full-fledged college football. I realized we had some teams playing week 0, but if we're going to overreact, now's the time to really overreact, right? I mean, we're going to do so after the first week of the college football season. So what do you feel like we are overreacting to the most right now in college football?
That one, we don't know how this college football season is going to end, and we thinking that, you know, if your team lost, they are the worst. That's why I can't stand them. And if they won, I told y'all, man, we're making improvements. You know nothing about your team after week 1. You really don't. Like, what do you know about your team? In Florida, they got a quarterback controversy, and they ran for 400 yards. Is quarterback controversy? No, just let them hand the ball off. Until proven otherwise, hand the ball off. If you are at Clemson, they stink. They can't even get a first down. They can't even get a touchdown. No, it is week 1, and I get it. Sam Howell, he ain't good. Virginia Tech, they're going to win the ACC. Clemson, they average. You know, Kevin, it shows you why college football is so engulfing, right? Because we used to be the one talking ourselves off the ledge. Now we're talking other people off the ledge. It's week 1. Because guess what? The teams that won this week, not named Alabama, not named Georgia, not name Oklahoma, not name Ohio State, they could lose next week. So I'm not going to get too high and too low about this thing, Kevin. I understand that college football is unforgiving, and we as fans know good and well we are our worst enemy because we talk more trash than anybody, but it'll be just fine. It's week 1. I'm pretty sure it'll be just fine.
I mean, one thing I think people are definitely overreacting to, and maybe it's just from BJ and some folks around here on this show, is that, Auburn is looking just tremendous. I mean, they beat Akron. I mean, let's calm down. Like, I know Brian Harson's going to have – I mean, did you expect Brian Harson's offense is going to come in just – I mean, I know we looked at Texas A&M, and they were kind of pedestrian a little bit. Florida was kind of pedestrian a little bit in the first half. But, I mean, I think everybody's over here saying, oh, wow. Auburn. I mean, look, yes, they look good at week 1. Let's calm down a little bit because, again, it was Akron who I believe did not win a game last year. So – I think we just need to pump the brakes on Auburn. And I said, I'll make my assessment on Auburn in a couple of weeks when they start to jump into SEC play and see how they stack up that way. But, I mean, the fact they look good against Akron, I don't know if that tells me a whole lot one way or another. I think people are overreacting to Auburn saying, Auburn's there. They could be sneaky. And maybe in a little bit, are we overreacting to LSU going out on the West Coast and losing to UCLA? Maybe we're not, but I feel like LSU is probably going to have something to say about that before it's all said and done in regards to that week 1 loss.
I mean, now if you're an LSU fan, I get it. Half because, well, number one, all those things we say about Coach Orgeron, he kind of lived up to the billing. Walking in, threatening fans, saying, "What's up? Come down here and say it in my face with your ugly blue shirt on." Did your team go out there and lay an egg? Maybe Chip Kelly is Ed Orgeron at this point. You haven't lived up to the contract since you got to UCLA. LSU better get it together. They better get it together fast because everybody was so high on Mr. Mac Johnson. But I just think that what happens is in these situations, Kevin, it depends on the brand and it depends on what the brand is representing. LSU is a big brand. LSU understands that no matter what we do, big or small, it is going to be elevated no matter what it is. Coach Orgeron is polarizing. Why? Because he want to fight. And maybe he get mad because won't nobody let him fight because, well, you can't fight no more, Coach O. But it's week 1, Kevin. It happens, right? Like I said, I was on Twitter when Georgia Tech lost. And for those that think Georgia Tech fans don't care about Georgia Tech, you better guess again. They were losing it. So college football just means, I'm not advocating for the SEC when I say this, but it does mean more to the fans than we really know. And we kind of saw, and Kevin, once again, we're going to be doing this in week 2. Because unfortunately for us, we can't separate perception from reality. The reality of college football is we have nothing to do with it. But the perception is we think we have all to do it. It's on us. It's how we cheer, how we criticize, how we give feedback. So it's week 1. I love it. It's like week 1 in college football is like the Braves opening day game. If they lose, BJ gonna overreact because all the games count the same. But when they win, he's optimistic. So I love it. I love it, Kevin. We are already in mid-season form, and it's already week 1. Could you imagine how it's going to be come week 9, week 10?
We've got more to come here on 3 and Out. Drew Cronic, Mercer head football coach, going to join us when we return. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. We are joined by the head football coach of the Mercer Bears, Drew Cronic, who joins us here on 3 and Out. Coach, welcome. College football is back. It's got to be a good feeling for you and your team to have at least a week under your belt already.
It does. It kind of feels cool to play football in the fall. We played 8 games in the spring. We played 3 in the fall last year, but it just kind of feels good to be, have some normalcy and play it in the fall. And we're still battling COVID. There's still that out there. But it does feel pretty cool to have an August camp and have a game and all that. So we're excited.
Coach, to those freshmen that came in last year that really don't know what it's like to have a fall camp, they kind of came in and kind of had to learn the ropes. How much have you learned about those guys, understanding that, look, we understand that pandemic was different for everybody, but how much different for them is it coming into a fall camp, having a full spring, and obviously getting ready for those guys in Tuscaloosa?
Well, you covered a lot of ground right there with that question. We had a lot of, honestly, when you play 8 games and nobody loses eligibility, we had a bunch of freshmen last year play a ton and play well. I felt like, new staff coming in. I was hired in December of 2019. We're trying to establish our culture. We're here to get it right. Our job is coming here and figure out, how to win. And, so COVID hit after 3 days of spring. And so we had to send the guys home. We got back in the fall, played 3 games, trying to catch back up a little bit. And then in the spring, we got better. We had a successful spring and had a winning season in the spring. And a lot of kids that play were young guys, man. So to get in here now and you're trying to see how does that affect what you do in the fall? When they just played 8 games in the spring, does it change anything about what you do, in that August camp, not having as much time in between seasons? And honestly, we worked them hard in the off season this summer. We had a good 8-week cycle with them. And we practiced. We came out here and practiced in August, and there were a few more NCAA rules this year as far as you had to have a certain number of helmet only. There was a few extra there. But we practiced, and so I'm gonna be honest with you, we haven't changed a lot. The kids have come in and practiced hard, and got a game under our belt, and it's still hot down here in Macon, Georgia, so we battle that on a daily basis. But we really hadn't changed. If anything, it's been better because we've had a chance to be harder on them. Last year, especially in the spring, you always know how it goes in the spring. You're thin in the spring anyway when you're having spring practice. So when you're trying to play 8-game season, so we had to be a little more careful in the spring. We've kind of maybe gotten away from that a little bit and got back to normal as well from a practice standpoint. So kids have done a good job.
And again, you opened up with a 69-point victory in game number 1. I would imagine to come out and finally play the opener. That's how you want to start. Obviously, 69-0 offensively, defensively. Did you have a whole lot of critiques after that ball game for you?
Yeah, you're always, our whole goal is to worry about us, okay? And let's don't worry about so much who we're playing, but let's go be the best we can be. So there were so many things. You should get so much better between your first game and your second game. Now, it may not appear that way, because of the wide range, the spectrum of what we play, who we're playing against the first weekend, and obviously what we're getting ready to play this weekend. But you're trying to find ways to improve and play at the highest level your team is capable of playing at. So we did some good things last week. It was good to play a game, good to get, play against somebody in opposite color jersey instead of each other. But we're going to be tested in a way this weekend, where any little mistake just gets magnified. So that'll be good for us. That'll be good for us to improve on.
And Coach, I read something that said you said the glue is starting to dry when it comes to these players. What exactly did you mean by that?
I'm a big believer in culture winning, okay, and the way you do things on a daily basis. And I've been at the small college level, as a head coach for the most part, and we've had success because we've been hard on kids. We've held them accountable, but our players know that we love them. Okay, we want to treat our players, and I try to hire people on my staff that, listen, I want you to treat them like you would your own child. I got 3 boys I'm hard on, but they know I love them. and when you get in here and kids know you love them and you care about them, you're trying to put them in good situations, they go play hard for you. And then they learn to love each other. And that's what's really important in our culture. You'll probably see behind me what our three core values are in our program is love, compete, and believe. We want to understand how to love each other, and that's modeled by our coaches. I love my coaches, love my coaching staff. Doesn't mean we agree all the time, but I love coming to work every day. And we're a family deal. I want wife and kids running around the offices. I want our players to see that. But I also want a bunch of kids who are going to compete their tail off. Now, I don't care if it's 2 a.m. in the parking lot. I want a bunch of kids who want to go out and play somebody better than them and figure out a way to get it done and not run from challenges. And then, believe for me is I've seen it in several instances where we took over a Division II program at Lenoir-Rhyne a couple years ago that had been 3-7 and 3-8, and we won 12 games the first year. The same kids, but they just started believing in each other and believing in what we were doing. And that's when we talk about culture, those are the things we're talking about. Now, we obviously need talent. We need to recruit talent to come in here to help us be successful. But a bunch of kids that love each other and compete their tail off and believe in what we're doing, that team is going to be the best it can be. And so we're learning those things. I saw that in the spring. Early in the spring, we didn't believe in ourselves. And I told our kids early on, look, I'm going to tell you that you can be good until you believe me. All right. Until you start really believing me. And we won games in the fourth quarter and we got better, and, you could see those things happening, which was a blessing and a privilege to be a part of. So I like our players. The right ones have left. Okay. There's been a few that have found an exit ramp. Sometimes you have a little addition by subtraction, and the ones that have stayed with us have bought into what we're doing. And we've been able to sign some kids that believe what we believe. So that's what I mean. That culture, we're not there yet. Okay. But that glue's starting to dry, and we're starting to really understand those concepts. And that's really a blessing as a coach to see kids start to figure that out. I like our players. I like our football team.
Drew Cronic joining us here on 3 and Out. And Coach, we're up and down the coast of Georgia. You guys have recruited this area very well. Speak to, going through your roster, they're all over the place. Speak to the guys that you have on your team that are from up and down the coast, Southeast Georgia, that are really making a big impact for you guys.
Yeah, obviously we're going to recruit the state of Georgia pretty hard. I really believe that the state of Georgia is one of the finest high school football states, in the country, and we're right smack dab in the middle of the state of Georgia. And honestly, my father was a high school coach in Georgia for over 30 years, so this is how I grew up. I'm back in my home state and excited about that. And but we're going to hit Florida. Okay, we're going to hit Florida. There's a lot of great athletes down there, and we're going to get into Alabama some. We're going to get into South Carolina and North Carolina and Tennessee, and really try to hit the Southeast. Now, this is a high academic school, so you've got to find the kids that can be successful academically here, so that eliminates some guys, so you can't just have a small area. You got to spread out a little bit. But I look up and down our roster, and I don't know about, trying to name specific kids, but yeah, they're a bunch of Georgia kids, but there's also some kids from Florida, Alabama, Tennessee, South Carolina, North Carolina. We've been able to really hit those areas. It's been unusual recruiting, as it has been for everybody, just because, man, we were in a dead period almost the entire time since I took over the program. The last time I've been in a high school, okay, was January of 20. Okay, that's been a year and a half. Then we had the pandemic, we had the dead period, and so it was really nice in June to finally have kids be able to come on our campus. We had our camps, and it's a whole lot easier to recruit when somebody can come look at it and touch it and feel it a little bit and see what you're really all about, look you in the eye and shake your hand. So that's been good this summer. So it'll be a real blessing this fall as we get our opportunities to get our evaluations and get out on the road. It'll be nice to get in high schools again and continue to build those relationships and see people face to face. So we're looking forward to that this fall, obviously.
Coach, you said earlier you want to play somebody that's better than you and find a way to get it done. Well, Alabama's about as good as it's gonna be as far as like a barometer. But talk about that, not just playing them, but I know you guys are a total different team at home than you are away. Just how much do you learn from playing against a team like Alabama, and how much is just competing well on the road is going to be big for you guys this year?
I think you make a great point. We played very well at home in the spring. We're undefeated in the spring, and we've got, for whatever reason, we got to learn to focus better okay, on the road, and we're gonna, you know, we're always looking for ways to try to make the road trip as much like, you know, home as possible, where we can focus and, you know. But I've had teams that won better on the road. Some of it's just the makeup of your team and just learning how to do those things. And but now when you go play Alabama, okay, that's the best college football team in the country. That's just, I mean, that's a fact. And so every mistake you make gets amplified so much, you know, because you can do all the right things, and you know they just got a dude, you know, that's going to be playing on Sunday, you know, and he's going to whip you. But still, believing that taking the right step and shooting your hands in the right place, and being in the right gap and running the right depth on right and using your fundamentals gives us the best opportunity to have some success this Saturday. You know, so you're either going to do that or you're going to get beat up bad. So we have to do that. And I think this is a great opportunity for us to go learn and get something on film where when we come back here, we go, look, you did a good job on this and you held your own. Okay. Hey, you didn't use the fundamental on this one, and look what happens to you against great competition, because we want to win a national championship at the FCS level. That's our goal here. And so we're going to play against some really good players at this level, you know, and it might not be 11 of them like Alabama have, okay, at the same time, but there's going to be a couple out there, you know, when you play teams in the playoffs and all that. And if you don't use good fundamentals, you don't compete the right way, and you don't believe in what you're doing, you're not going to have success. So this is a great opportunity for us to go play against really, really great players and compete and try to win some battles. And let's gain 4 here. Let's get a first down. Let's get down in the red zone, find a way to punch it in, you know, and defensively, let's get off the field. Let's get off the field some on third down. Okay. Put them in some, you know, get a lost yardage play, do the fundamentals right. And you'd be surprised what you can accomplish when you do things the right way.
Drew Cronic joining us here, head football coach at Mercer. You mentioned Alabama. What's been kind of the tenor of your team kind of this week? I know when teams say, oh, we're playing Alabama, you get fired up. Obviously, it's a step up for you guys. Is it still kind of that same atmosphere amongst your team? Like, hey, we get a chance to go show what we can do against Alabama.
Yeah, our kids are excited. Okay. It's an opportunity to show that you belong on that field. You know, that it's an opportunity to play in front of 100,000 people. What a great opportunity that we have. And our kids understand that. And I believe our kids will go play their daggum guts out. I really do. And if you'll do that, you never know. I mean, you just go play, man. Just go play and play as hard as you can with a great attitude and play for each other, and do the little things right and give yourself the best chance to be successful. And I think our kids are excited about that, and I believe they'll do that.
Drew Coach, obviously you have I was just going to say what we got here, Kevin. I mean, you know, Coach, you come from a coaching family doing what you do. What have you learned about yourself in this pandemic? Obviously, you know, you coaches, y'all love football in a different way than players do. But what has our Coach Cronic learned about himself in this crazy time, you know, going through this pandemic?
You know, we've had to be more creative. I think, you know, when the kids left after 3 days of spring practice, we had to find other ways, you know, to teach, to get on. I mean, and the Zoom meeting, man, became a really popular deal, and how to get creative with that and still build leadership and have team devotions and try to build the relationships with your players. So I think there's some things that we learned, even in recruiting, you know, from virtual visits and all those kind of things, where you had to get more creative. And you're still going to use some of those things that you picked up, you know, to continue to try to do a better job, recruiting and teaching, you know, but I think also, hopefully for me personally, hopefully it helped me learn how to love kids better, you know, and because it wasn't just the pandemic last year. There were so many things, the social issues, okay, and all the stuff these kids were dealing with. It was just raining down on top of them, you know, all this stuff. And there's so many voices out there, and it's confusing sometimes, especially when you're a young person, about, you know, what do I need to be listening to? What voices, you know, are important for me? Who is tearing me down, and who's being uplifting to me? You know, that's hard when you're going through all that stuff. So, hopefully, and listen, I think I learned, you know, it helped me to be a better listener, hopefully, you know, and to listen to, especially with our African-American kids, you know, some of the things that go on, and you want you want to see those things change. You want to support people. You want everybody to have the same opportunities. You want everybody to be loved. You want everybody to feel protected. And so hopefully, it made me more sensitive as a mentor to a lot of the things these guys are dealing with. And really try to. I want our players to know that I love them. Okay, and I think they do. And now I'm hard on them, like I said. But that's part of it, man. That's part of loving your kids, is holding them accountable, making sure they're doing the right things. And there was a lot of challenges to that, but in some ways you could argue with our program, especially us being a new staff, it brought us closer together in some ways. So the kids fought the good fight through all that stuff. I mean, we didn't have a single kid. We played 11 games last year, 3 in the fall, 8 in the spring. We didn't have a single kid miss a game due to COVID. That's the Lord blessing us right there. I mean, that is a miracle. Okay. It's a lot of people doing a great job, and being conscientious about keeping themselves safe, but we didn't have a single. So that tells me you had buy-in, that kids wanted to play ball. And listen, by the time you have 2 seasons in 1 year, you're weary. Okay. You're mentally fatigued. And I told our kids with about 2 games to go in the spring, listen, guys, I know that you're mentally fatigued. I kept counting down. Give me 16 more days. Give me 15 more days of everything you have. Because at some point, the work you put in right now, you're going to get blessed because you did it. And our kids did that. And I'm very appreciative of that. So I'm very happy for them that we're in a little bit more normalcy, where they can enjoy it a little bit more. And they can reap the rewards of the work they put in last year, and the guys that just stuck with it, which I'm so grateful for.
Drew Cronic, head football coach at Mercer, our guest here. Coach, really appreciate the time. Best of luck to you guys this weekend against Alabama. But again, thanks so much.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
And you can catch Mercer and Alabama coming up this weekend on SEC Network. And we'll come back with more 3 and Out here on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you back here, 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, Ben Troop, glad you're making us a part of your day. We'll get to Take 3 next hour. Also look at the Atlanta Braves, who are really playing some good baseball right now as they come down the home stretch of the season. We'll look at our Southern Power Poll and more, as also been the National Football League gets underway on Thursday night. And we can speaking of overreactions and the gnashing of teeth, we can let that get started with all the happenings in the NFL, because we know NFL fans don't overreact. Maybe not as bad as college football fans, but still a lot of overreaction in the first couple of weeks as to who's already out of the playoff picture after the first week.
Kevin, I mean, the thing about it is right. Isn't this what we do though? Like, I mean, I know yesterday we was talking to Cam about, making sure Cam know that you can't talk about your best team in a complimentary way, Cam, because if they lose, they forget the game. It's because of what Cam said. So people are already eliminated because of week 1. The teams aren't good, Kevin. The players don't care. They don't understand what's really going on, right? They just happy to be here. All they care about is NIL and getting their money. It ain't about the league. No, it's week 1. And we're the problem. When you look in the mirror, the person that's staring back at you, we're the problem. You know why? Because if your team won, you complimentary. You know who was talking trash about my team after week 1? My mama. All I heard was, I did Emory Jones. I don't like him. I don't like him. I said, Mama, we won. I don't care. So, Kevin, it ain't even good enough to win no more. You got to look good doing it. So, basically, people, we have a problem. We have been diagnosed with loving college football, and unfortunately NFL season is starting, so we get the double dip. If your Saturday is bad and your Sunday is bad, I don't know what to tell you, because your week is going to be ugly.
Certainly. You got the Falcons, Jags. We'll talk more about it coming up in the final hour of the program, but certainly Atlanta will be in Jacksonville, the debut of 2 first-time NFL head coaches. Now, I know Urban was head coach in college, but the first-time head coach, how much scrutiny do you place on those guys, Ben? And really, how much do you think there is to learn in the pro game versus the college game? Obviously, it's different. Guys are getting paid. I mean, I guess now college, technically, guys are getting paid, but guys are getting paid sometimes more than you. And what do you think Urban Meyer has to learn about being a head coach in the National Football League once these games actually start counting for real here?
He has to learn, Kevin, that the success he's previously had is over with, that the game is going to dictate, like the flow of the game is going to dictate play calling. And just because you might have, an elite talent at the quarterback position down the road, he's still a rookie and you're still a rookie. And sometimes the best play is no play at all. Throw the ball away. Don't try to get all creative, because Urban Meyer has never had failure in his life for real. He's never really felt that. Big time programs, winning national championships at Florida and Ohio State. And so I think for him, it's just understanding that losing is a part of winning in the game in the NFL. And I know it's rough, because Trevor Lawrence, for the first time in his life, he is going to lose a regular season game. I know more people think Trevor Lawrence really think you can win them all, because in the regular season he has. But I think with Urban, Kevin, it's things like Tim Tebow is a feel-good story. You shouldn't have had him on your team. Chris Doyle is a friend of yours. You shouldn't have hired him. He is going to have to take that humble pie and accept the fact that people thought he would never coach again. Remember we said never coach again because of his health? No, Tim Tebow and them left. Went to Ohio State, didn't he? Nobody said a word. Then he left again. Now he's at Jacksonville. What the difference is, you ain't finna have the success you had those other places. You are starting from ground zero. You have a stadium that has pools in it. That's how bad it is to root for Jacksonville. Hey man, come get in the pool. Okay, so. But I just think, Kevin, just as long as he can understand that everybody goes through growing pains, and he want to have that Pete Carroll success. Pete Carroll was in the NFL, left, came back. I don't know. This might be Urban Meyer's first stint as a head coach. I don't know if he's going to remain there, but we'll see what happens.
I mean, end of the day, we got about 20 seconds. Do you feel like, I don't know, you can define this any way you want. Do you feel like Urban Meyer's going to stick in the National Football League?
I do, Kevin. I think that this year he's going to learn a lot about himself, and he's going to know that it's not just about him. It's about the players and the coaches and the schemes. And once he can get past the ego of I'm Urban Meyer and just settle in, I think he'll be a really, really good coach. But he gonna have to go through them growing pains.
Yeah, you're not taking over a great football team by any chance.
You won one game last year. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it was the first game. So maybe they come out and repeat that Again, if you start 1-0, you could very well end up 1-16 when it's all said and done. We got take 3 around the corner. We're talking some Braves baseball. Look at our Bud Light Power Poll as well. It's 3 and out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Hour 2 here on this Wednesday. Kevin Thomas, Ben Troop, glad you are with us. We'll talk some Braves baseball. Braves looked good last night. Bullpen let it get tied back up. Offense responds right away and takes it back. We'll also get to our Bud Light Southern Power Poll coming up in just a little bit here on the show as well. But first, let's take 3 here on 3 and Out. All right, Ben, take 1. How big of a year do you expect from James Robinson?
A huge year. James Robinson, obviously undrafted free agent that was got voted by his peers to be a number 100 in the top 100 players. And the thing is, I think he's going to have a big year, not just because he wants to, but because he has to. When you got a rookie quarterback and he's a guy that's going to make a lot of mistakes, the one thing that he can lean on is a solid run game. No Travis Etienne, which is going to hurt that offense. But James Robinson is a guy that understands what his role is. Kevin kind of, I'm not saying he's his player, but kind of remind me when Peyton Manning was a rookie. He had old Marshall Faulk next to him. Now, I'm not saying James Robinson is Marshall Faulk, because I know BJ is somewhere going, that is ridiculous if he just heard that statement. But you can rely on a steady player at the running back position because he's not really there to run the ball more than he's there to pick up protections, protect you in the passing game. So, yeah, I think James Robinson is going to have a huge year. And for the betterment of the offense and the team, he better have a big year.
And I agree with you, but probably more so because Travis Etienne is out, and maybe Travis Etienne would have taken a few carries away, third downs, something like that. I think he's now going to be the primary focus, and they're not – I think, Ben, you probably know this. Had Etienne stayed healthy, there were going to be some situations where they probably were going to force him the ball just to see what he could do and maybe take some carries away from James Robinson. But now that he's gone, I think obviously James Robinson's the man in the running game, and I think he's going to have a huge year because of it. All right, take 2. Which first-year SEC coach had the best debut?
Man, wow. I like what Coach Harsin did. I like what Coach Heupel did. But I'm going to go with old Beamer Ball in South Carolina for the reason that the guy that's playing quarterback was a freaking coach. Zeb Nolan went from throwing footballs to the players, as a coach, to putting on a uniform and actually saying, wait a minute, dude. You was a coach, right? Yeah, you in the wrong meeting room. And obviously it was against, East Illinois. It's not like, those are world beaters, but the circumstances, Kevin, because we didn't really know how was Beamer Ball going to look. With the fact that your best quarterback went from a grad assistant to a freaking starting quarterback, and he was efficient in the game, 13 to 22, 121 yards, 4 touchdowns. Like, he's not going to wow you in the box score, but to be able to have that level of, accountability and responsibility and to go out there and win the game 46-0, I got to go old Beamer Ball. I don't want to say Beamer Ball is here to stay, Kevin, in the SEC, but for one weekend, it looked really, really good. So give me Shane Beamer in them Gamecocks.
Yeah, I thought that's a good pick. I thought, Josh Heupel at Tennessee wasn't bad. I was expecting, with as fast as he wants to play, it would be a complete disaster, and it really kind of wasn't. I was kind of thoroughly surprised. I know it's, again, a lot of these games that we're picking the first-year head coach, they certainly got it easier than Sam Pittman got it last year. Some of those guys, I think that was better than I expected it to be. If I'll leave it at that. So I will say he had the best debut. Clark Lee, obviously, we're sorry, Vanderbilt. But if you get blasted,
we're not going to make excuses.
If you get blasted by ETSU, what's the hope that you're going to win a single game this year again? I mean,
it's going to be rough. And Kevin, they don't make excuses. We will not make excuses for being Vanderbilt. I don't know what that you should have did. Something rough.
Better start making some excuses. I mean, look, that's an uphill climb. But yeah, there's a lot of first-year head coaches, solid debuts over the weekend. Moving along, take 3. Is Austin Riley a legit MVP candidate? Ben there at third base. I know a lot of folks have said, well, what about Freddie Freeman and maybe Ozzie Albies? Is Austin Riley, though, an MVP type candidate? I'm trying to find obviously he has done a tremendous job.
I would say yes, Kevin, for this reason. Do you understand what he has to do to even get noticed? Not even on his same team, in his same infield. You're talking about Danvers, you're talking about Isaiah, you talking about Freddie Freeman. The number one thing as a hitter is batting average. He's batting .303. Last time I checked, the best hitters in baseball, the best hitters around 275, 280. He's at .303. Now, will he keep it up? I don't know. Then I go to home runs. He got 29. Then I go to RBIs. He got 87. I think Kevin, I would say yes for Austin Riley because his pressure is coming from one being your everyday third baseman, but dude, I don't want to let this team down. I got to stare over and look at Freddie Freeman every freaking day, and there go Osby, and there go Dansby. So I would say he is because you know you're a good player when they're not talking about you in a negative light. This time last year, it was, dude, he's not giving us good plate appearances. He can mash, but he strikes out a lot. To go from that to this, and he's in a crowded infield that everybody's good. You got arguably, Kevin, the best infield in baseball. Take nothing away, from different players. You got the best first baseman in baseball. That is hands down inarguable. Dansby Swanson is doing something we've never seen for a shortstop in Braves history. Ozzie is Ozzie. And then they say, well, what is Austin Riley doing? Oh, nothing, just 87 RBIs, 29 home runs, batting .303. What? Yes. So, and he's getting it done defensively. So for me, I would say yes, and that's probably the greatest compliment he's going to get because it's going to be hard to win the MVP as long as you play with Freddie Free and when Ronald Acuna Jr. comes back. But Kevin, is there a greater compliment from a player who was just trying to be your everyday starter to now MVP consideration? That's got to be up there.
And it's amazing, Ben, because you sit here and think about it. Back in late April, early May, there were a lot of people saying, is Austin Riley the third baseman of the future? Should they potentially trade Austin Riley and get something else? Should they go a different direction? He's struggling at the plate, strikes out a lot, can't hit the curveball, all that kind of stuff. And as you said, he's now gone to taking it, hitting over 300. He's going to have over 100 RBI, which is tremendous. If he doesn't get to 30 home runs, I don't know why he wouldn't. So you're talking about over 300, 30 home runs, 100 RBI. Those are stud numbers at the Major League Baseball level. I think the problem he's going to run into, should he be an MVP consideration? Yes. Problem he's going to run into is getting enough voting, obviously with some of the other guys that are having tremendous seasons. He obviously plays with Freddie Freeman. Ozzie Albies having a great season. I think when it comes to MVP, you probably will split votes with your own teammate there at first base. But yeah, I think Austin Riley should be in the discussion. Will he win it? I don't think so. But the dude has put together a sensational season, especially considering that people were ready to write him off, much like Dansby Swanson. Dansby Swanson, people were like, man, can we do better? He has played tremendous defense, starting to hit the baseball. He's got career highs in home runs, more home runs than we've seen from an Atlanta Braves shortstop ever. And you really start to look at these pieces, Ben, and say, is this, and I know I've asked this on the show a couple of times, is this the best infield collectively that the Atlanta Braves ever had? I think it's certainly putting itself there now where it's almost, you can't argue that. And I'm well aware that a guy named Chipper Jones played third base,
yes,
and Terry Pendleton and Fred McGriff, and you've had some great players. But as a four-person collection of talent, you have not seen this too often where short, second, first, third, all slapping the ball around. All are pretty good defensively, if not Gold Glove level. Matter of fact, Freddie Freeman's got a Gold Glove. I think some of these might be Dansby and some might be in the running to get one before their career is over. So all really getting it done defensively. All can hammer the baseball. I think if you're a Braves fan, you need to enjoy this collection right now because it's never been as good in the infield as what we're looking at right now. I mean, we've had some good players. Don't get me wrong. There's been some good players there in Atlanta, but it's never been this good. From an offensive and defensive all-around standpoint, give me a four that's been better. I don't think you're going to find a four that's been better that we've seen in the history of the Atlanta Braves than what you're looking at right now.
And Kevin, that's saying something, right? Because once again, when you talk about the Braves, you will talk about some historically great players. No one, like you said, no one is saying that Austin Riley is Chipper. Nobody's Chipper. Like nobody is in the history, definitely in Braves history. But Freddie Freeman, I mean, what he's doing, it's something you said about, people talk about the impact of Freddie Freeman. Dude, if I got to play with this dude every day, there isn't a day that goes by that Austin Riley isn't asked about Freddie Freeman. But that's another reason why Austin is not going to win it. Look at how long Freddie Freeman had to be good to finally win it. He was good a long consistency is what's going to be on hopefully Austin Riley's side. But Kevin, have you ever seen this big of a jump? Because like you mentioned, I mean, Austin Riley it's never been about you hitting for power. It's about plate appearances. To go from that to this, with such a crowded infield. It would be different if he was doing it by himself. Dude, I'm trying to meet the production of Dansby. And Ozzie and Freddie Free every night, and he's really, really good defensively. I'm just saying, I just think that I give it to him. Alex Anthopoulos, man, he knows what he's doing. Because a lot of times you hear, this is the next great one, this is the next great one. Where's Christian Pache? Haven't even talked about Christian Pache. The biggest thing he did is pick Andrew Jones' number. And Austin Riley is saying, look, I'm not going to make no waves. I'm not going to make no excuses. But 87 RBIs, 29 homers, and 303, that's tops in the league type numbers. And he's 1 of 4 in an infield. So shout out to that man. And he's 23, 24? That's crazy.
Oh, yeah. Still got a lot of upside for him there at third base. Been fun to watch. That's Take 3. We do it each and every day. Here this time, we'll come back. We'll keep talking Braves as they had a good win last night in the middle of a stretch here where they need to take advantage and try to open up that lead. We'll break that down as well. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you back here, 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, Ben Troop, thanks for making us a part of your day. We'll look at our Bud Light Southern Power Poll coming up here in just a little bit. But, Ben, we were talking Braves there. Braves got up early last night on the Nationals. Matzik let it go late in the ball game, but right there, bottom of the 8th, Ozzie Albies comes back, hits the game winner, right-handed, another homer there. Offense rolls. Braves get to see their lead pushed up to 2.5 in the National League East. So really a good thing there for the Atlanta Braves. And again, after a tough West Coast road trip, good to get back on the right foot there against the Washington Nationals. As we said, Nationals and Marlins, not good teams. Really got to capitalize in here over the next handful of days.
I mean, Kevin, listen, that bullpen deficit, they still find a way to make it interesting, right? But I mean, the bats are just so good that even the bullpen can't spoil it. But I give this Braves team a lot of credit. I mean, staying power is something to say, Kevin, because it took what you go from win loss to finding a way to stay in it, to finally get the lead and to see how competitive this thing has got. It's crazy. I always come back to the fact that with all the games that's played in baseball, it still comes down to what the last 2 weeks of the season, because people think, man, yes, you would love to be, what the Padres? I mean, no, not the Giants. I mean, their lead is ridiculous right now. So I just think that for this Braves team, Kevin, just keep staying the course. Don't do too much. That bullpen is what it is. It's very, very hot and cold. Some nights it looks good, some nights it doesn't. But the Braves understand what the task at hand is. They understand those pesky Phillies. They're right there. They're not going nowhere. But putting distance between them and you and making them try to chase you down by the end of the season is probably going to be the recipe for success.
If you remember way back in the beginning of the year, Ben, BJ was sitting there telling us, look, every game, it matters. It counts the same and this and that. And you don't want to look back. I get it, but here we are. It's September. Now every game matters from here on out what you do. I've said that a bunch. Like, it's all about putting yourself in position to win. I know they count the same, but it's no different than football. You play the first 10 weeks to put yourself in a position for the last 6, now 7 weeks of the season, so that the last 6 games really matter. And I think that's what you're talking about with baseball. The calendar turns to September. You want those final 28, 29 games or so to really mean the difference in being in the playoffs, maybe being a wild card, not being in it. Because I think it's been proven the team usually that's playing the hottest baseball in September really carries that into the postseason. You don't see a lot of teams who got a big lead and it's like, hey, we won 6 of our last 12 ball games or 6 of our last 15 ball games, and here we are ready for the postseason, go in and just start playing on a different level. You really like to get that momentum coming down the stretch, and I think if you're Atlanta, that's what you use some of these series for. Like the Nationals, like the Miami Marlins, really play good baseball. So when you go play the Padres, and I think you have to go play the Giants, you can use some of that momentum, and it's not the end-all, be-all potentially for you getting in the playoffs. So some big series coming up. I don't want to downplay it, but you have to take care of the winnable series when you have them in front of you.
And Kevin, I mean, something I want to ask you. I mean, who do you give the most credit to? Snit, because obviously, Snit has to, he has to, put together these lineups, day in and day out. Or is it Anthopoulos and what he was able to add at the trade deadline? Because this is how you know the Braves are good. Mike Soroka has not played. Marcell Ozuna, I mean, he didn't play enough to have an impact on the team. And Ronald Acuna Jr. is not back till next year. And the Braves are 2.5 games up. That's got to say something to either what Alex Anthopoulos did, what Snit does, or maybe it's a mixture of both, because we don't even talk about Acuna, and I mean that in a respectful way, by the way. We don't even talk about him, and they're still more than on schedule right now.
Yeah, I think it's probably a mixture of both of those guys, quite frankly, because I think there's plenty of blame to go around when it comes to Brian Snitker for sometimes how he's managed this team. And I think certainly going through stretches where he's run Will Smith out there in the 9th inning and things of that nature, there's plenty of blame there. I think Alex Anthopoulos deserves some of the credit or a good portion of it, because at the trade deadline, he went out and made moves that didn't cost you a lot organizationally in terms of future potential prospects, dollar amounts, what have you. You made moves, and there is no question. You can't say otherwise because of what the team was doing. This team is better since those moves happened than they were beforehand. So you went out and you made the team better, and they have been significantly better. So they won, 12 in a row something like that, or 17 out of 19 in that stretch there. They've been significantly better since the trade deadline. So I give Alex Anthopoulos a lot of credit to say, look, we can make this team better, and we don't have to go out and be the New York Yankees and steal a $25-30 million guy. We can go out, make an appropriate move, shore up the outfield, knowing that Ronald Acuna is coming back next year, knowing that with what they've already done, this team looks to be very good next year. You re-sign Charlie Morton to a little bit of extension. Everybody in the infield not named Freddie Freeman is already under contract. You got Travis d'Arnaud coming back. You have Jorge Soler potentially, Adam Duvall, Jock Peterson. Ronald Acuna is coming back. I mean, this team looks to be very, very good going into 2022. I'm interested to see how they finish strong. But if I had to lean one way or another, I would say more credit goes to Alex Anthopoulos for putting the right pieces in there to kind of jumpstart this team, and Brian Snitker for weathering the storm. Because again, he's kind of been the doubter from the fan base, right? I mean, he's steadfast in his message, but the fan base, man, anytime something goes wrong, Brian Snitker doesn't know what he's doing. He's just stuck in his ways. And again, I fall into that. I'm not gonna lie. I've come on the show and said, look, I don't necessarily like 100% of the way he goes about it, night in and night out. But all that aside, as an old kind of little axiom goes, you can't argue with results. And the results of Brian Snitker being at the head of the pack are postseason, or NL East champs, NL East champs, NL East champs. And obviously they were with a few outs of making the World Series last year. So they've gotten that off of their back in terms of can't win in the postseason. Advancing to the NLCS. You can't argue with results. That's the ultimate right back at you. Whenever you truly want to say fans are giving me a hard time, hey, Brian Snitker doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't manage the game the right way. Well, you can't argue with the results. So the results are this team wins. This team has won the division every year he's been the manager, and Alex Anthopoulos has provided him with pieces even when things look dire to make the team better. The end. And there's really not much more at the end of the day you can bring it down to than that. Is say what you want. We don't have to like everything about how it goes down as an organization, but the bottom line is it's kind of like the Pittsburgh Steelers, where like everybody likes to say, why aren't the Steelers doing this or that? And there's Mike Tomlin just cruising right along, doing what he's doing, hardly ever misses the playoffs. It's like there's a lot of teams that would love to be the Pittsburgh Steelers and always be in the playoffs and gripe and complain that they haven't won a Super Bowl in X number of years. I kind of see that with the Atlanta Braves right now. They have gotten to a level of consistency where you're complaining when it's not excellence, 100% of the time.
So Kevin, I guess that just only leaves one thing: that breaking news. When do they give Freddie Freeman's new deal? Is it during this season, or do they get it done in the off season because of how big it's probably going to be?
Look, I think that's the thing. You sit back, you say the Braves are disrespecting Freddie, and I hate that phrase. Ben, as an athlete, maybe you can lean more into it and say, no, there is a level of disrespect at times. I just hate that phrase, like we're disrespecting. They haven't done anything. Like, they gave you a contract. You are playing on that contract. That contract is not up. They're not letting you dangle. They haven't done anything. I think if you want to take a 100-foot view of this thing, the signs that they're going to re-sign Freddie Freeman, to me, are actually encouraging. Well, why you say that, Kevin? Travis d'Arnaud's been locked up. Charlie Morton has been locked up. You've got a young pitching staff around him. You've got Ozzie Albies, Dansby Swanson, who's up for arbitration. They'll probably settle with him. And you've got Austin Riley, who's playing at a high level at third base. You're going to have Ronald Acuna back, locked in long-term. You've brought in pieces via trades that are still good to come back next year. Everything around this team screams, you go to Freddie Freeman and go, dude, look at the team we have. Do you want to be a part of this? Or do you want to go somewhere else? We're going to offer you a good deal. You want to be here. We want you to be here. Look what we've put together for you in terms of a supporting cast. I actually am encouraged that it's going to get done. I'm not even remotely sweating, and if it doesn't happen, I'll eat my words on this. But I'm not even remotely sweating that at some point they're going to re-sign Freddie Freeman and give him a nice contract. They're doing too many other moves to bolster what Freddie Freeman would want to come back. Hey, young guys all around you that are very good. They're locked in. We've secured them. Now let's get down to your demands and what you want. We've got the team to help you out. You've seen it. They're all coming back. What do you want to stay here? And I think they'll be more than willing to make that happen. And again, maybe it happens at the end of the season. And right now they're focused on getting in the postseason and making a run. But I feel like it's going to get done. And if you're a Braves fan, I think a lot of the moves that have happened are in and around just the trades are with guys that are going to stay and be a part of the team. That would be very enticing to me to pitch to Freddie Freeman on why you should come back and be a Brave and why we feel like we're going to do right by you, because I think a lot of the moves they put in place are for it. Look, it's not just this year, Freddie. We did these moves so that next year, year after that, obviously you're still in your prime. We can be contenders in a big way to go win a World Series.
No, you're right. No, I mean, I agree with everything you said. I think sometimes, too, when you look at a guy like Freddie Freeman, you don't realize, I ain't even looking at that way. Look at all we doing around you, Freddie. We're going to give you your money. We're going to do that. But there is nothing. Listen, everybody talks about, I want my money. Yeah, but they telling Freddie Freeman, you can be Mike Trout. We can give you that. You can go somewhere and get a lot of money and never make the playoffs again. Or we're going to give you it's not going to be a team-friendly deal. We're going to give you your money. But you also want to. You've been here in the dark ages. Now you seeing, us taking off, and with a healthy Ronald Acuna, with a healthy Mike Soroka, with what this team brings back, Austin Riley and Dansby Swanson. Oh my! This team. I mean, I don't know if a team is ever going to be constructed better than the Dodgers, Kevin, but good enough to beat them. You got to feel good about your chances moving forward. I agree. They're gonna give Freddie Freeman his money. I just think that we got to just like the first week of college football, we got to make up a problem where there isn't one. Freddie Free will be a lifer, I believe, as a Brave.
You're not a fan if you're not getting nervous, right? I guess that's kind of what the saying could be. We've got more to come. We're switching back. We're talking college football. Looking at the Southern Power Poll after the first week here of the year. It's 3-0 on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you along here, 3 and Out on this Wednesday afternoon. Glad you're making us a part of your day each week. SouthernPigskin.com. We got the Southern Power Poll presented by Bud Light this week. Ben, no question, as it's put together kind of a conglomerate of votes averaged in to come up with one Southern Power Poll from the ACC, SEC, and Sun Belt. Alabama 1, Georgia 2 after their first weekend. Clemson in the poll only goes to number 3, so had a big loss to Georgia. Slides down to number 3, Texas A&M number 4, and Ole Miss up at number 5 ahead of Florida. So you can check out the full Southern Power Poll there at southernpigskin.com, but I think obviously this is a reflection of a lot of folks. Georgia and Alabama number 1, number 2. Clemson, I think the question is how far do you have them sliding down after that loss to Georgia?
Yeah, I mean, I think 3. I think 3 is a solid. I mean, really, really solid. Nobody's going to be over Alabama, right? It was always going to be who's going to be number 2 and number 3. Well, number 2 just happened to play number 4, number 5, and they just switched places. But Georgia's defense was incredible. So was Clemson's defense. I mean, and let's face it, Clemson blinked once, and that cost them the game. When it was a 10-3 game, the fact that neither one of these offenses scored an offensive touchdown is crazy to me. But yeah, Clemson is still, they're going to beat most teams on this list, not named Georgia, not named Alabama. What else? Those just happen to be the 2 teams at number 1 and number 2. Ole Miss, what people forget about the Ole Miss game, Kevin, outside of the freaking target, and Lane Kiffin wasn't even there. He was, got COVID-19, so he wasn't even there. Couldn't even tell, I mean, no Lane Kiffin, no problem. I mean, Florida is always going to come down to, Emory Jones. Who is he really? A&M. I like Haynes King, but Haynes King has a problem with throwing the ball to the other team too, and their coach has already been writing a lot of checks. I mean, Kevin, in the offseason, Jimbo talking trash to Alabama in the offseason. That's not a recipe for success moving forward, for those of you who don't know. But NC State coming in at number 7. Kevin, NC State is always going to be that curious case, right? Like, they look good, but we just don't know. We'll never know how good or bad NC State is, but for one weekend, they look really, really impressive.
Yeah, and I think if I look at the poll, and I think the biggest overreaction would be Ole Miss at number 5. Again, I think we knew they were going to have a good offensive team. They do. They beat Louisville. Okay, I think Louisville was projected to finish, 6th or 7th in the ACC Atlantic by a lot of folks, down near the bottom. And they had a convincing victory. Again, does that mean they're all of a sudden one of the best teams in the Southern Conferences? I don't think so. I would put, Florida ahead of them. Even though Florida didn't have as impressive a victory, I think we've kind of had the conversation in years past about philosophies of polls and do you have more fluctuation early in the season. Look, I think you give people credit for beating folks. The way it worked out with the math, Virginia Tech finished behind North Carolina. Look, week 1, they came out and beat them. You got to put them ahead of them. I think that's a head-to-head matchup right in week 1. What better gauge are you going to get than that? That's like saying Georgia beat Clemson, but you're going to still vote Clemson ahead of Georgia because, they're a better team, and when they play again, it'll be – no. They got beat head-to-head, square up. Now, does that mean they can never pass them later in the season? No, but after week 1, I don't think you should have a team that you just got beat by behind you in the polls when you do something like that. So that's a couple of things that stand out to me. I think Auburn, by a lot of folks, I've said this all week, a little bit of an overreaction to them beating Akron. Did they look good? Yeah, I would hope they would look pretty good. Even the teams that, quote, struggled with like Florida and, Texas A&M in terms of everybody thought it was going to be 47-3 and it was going to be a cakewalk. Look, they still won. I think Auburn to me has been one of those. Now I'm hearing it more with Ole Miss, but Auburn to me, one of those teams that people really are reading a lot more into than they should. Brian Harsin's a good coach. Mike Bobo's a good offensive coordinator. Obviously they've got great defensive coaches as well. But it's one game against a team that was really, really bad. And again, they should look good in those games. I'm more interested in evaluating Auburn when it gets farther into the season. They start playing some SEC West teams, start getting into SEC East play, and maybe they win, but maybe we see a different Auburn team that doesn't look like they did, a knife going through butter against Akron. I don't know how much we learn about certain teams in games like that in week number 1. Usually if we learn anything, Ben, it's bad. A la Georgia Tech losing to Northern Illinois or Vanderbilt getting shut down by East Tennessee State. We learned the bad stuff. I don't know if you're learning a lot of good things about teams beating teams they're supposed to beat. Now, obviously, Florida beat a team they were supposed to beat. Should it have been more? Who's to say? They still won the ball game in the story. It doesn't matter. But I think largely in week one, you find out more what's wrong with teams than you do how good are they really.
Yeah, I mean, people think that running those scores up look good for you, right? But then you start saying to yourself, okay, not how good are you? How bad is the team you're playing? Like ETSU proved that Vanderbilt last year was not a fluke. They got beat. Like ETSU beat Vanderbilt. Like, we're gonna beat y'all. Like, and that's more of a mentality thing. I think the most disappointing on this list is LSU. Now, but you got to put that into context too. LSU, Baton Rouge, Louisiana dealing with a lot. They had to leave the state. I mean, had to deal with a lot when you're dealing with friends and family, loved ones, dealing with that Hurricane Ida and things of that nature. But on the field, they got dominated. I do agree with something you said, though, Kevin. Why is Virginia Tech behind UNC? And I wish that BJ was on the show to say, listen, guys, I understand. No. They played each other, and Virginia Tech won. I don't like this if they were to play again. Well, they won't. Because when they did, Virginia Tech won. And I don't know what – and I think sometimes – I think South Carolina should have been on this list. I think Tennessee could have easily been on this list. It's week one. Still giving LSU the benefit of the doubt because you're talking about their mental capacity. That's doing too much. They lost. We understand everything that went into it, but they got dominated. And I think sometimes, Kevin, that's how this list is construed. Hey, man, listen, on a neutral site, don't care. They lost. I don't want to hear all that neutral site stuff, these perceptions of what could happen. But I do agree with what you said about Auburn. 60-0 means that Akron is really, really bad, and we don't know about Auburn. Like, we really, really don't know. I mean, Akron was really looking forward to playing Auburn until, well, they kicked the ball off, and, well, you kind of see the end result. But Kentucky could have been on this list. South Carolina could have been on this. Tennessee could have been on this list, because you had some really, really good play. But for 1 week, we are already showing our biases. North Carolina could have easily been off this list, and Virginia Tech should be above North Carolina. LSU still made it. LSU was above Virginia Tech, and Virginia Tech won. So that just shows you a lot of biases when it comes to this list. But it is week one, Kevin. This thing gonna look the one constant is gonna be this. Alabama's gonna remain at number one. Hopefully, after week 3, they might go down. It's probably not gonna happen, but I'm a little biased. We'll see.
You can always hope and wish, I guess. No, but look, I think it's certainly when you look at the polls, and again, I'm just one of several people that vote this thing. I don't know how everybody else votes. I don't consult everybody else and see how they voted, but I just look at it and say in week one, at the very least, the only thing you have to go off of is head to head with if some of those is like Virginia Tech should be better than North Carolina. They just played. It's the only game either team has played. They just played. And they beat them. Georgia beat Clemson. They're ahead of them on this list, as they should be. Now, how far do you slide them down? That's another story. I think nationally, we had a discussion, Ben, of, is Clemson even going to make the playoffs now with their loss now week one, their schedule pretty weak? And I said, well, listen, you don't know how it's going to turn out. And people say, well, the ACC looked bad. Well, that's right. The ACC did look bad. Who's to say, though, Virginia Tech doesn't end up going to the ACC championship game potentially as a 1-loss team or 2-loss. You don't know how it's, and that looks different. Does North Carolina rebound? Do we look back? Is North Carolina only a 1 or a 2-loss team? And you look back and go, hey, maybe that loss to Virginia Tech on the road, mind you, wasn't that bad after all. Now, is there some inexcusable stuff? Yeah, sure. Georgia Tech, Duke, that's inexcusable. I think Miami losing to Alabama, I mean, raise your hand if you thought Miami was going to win that game and you don't live in Miami.
Or didn't go to Miami.
Exactly. I mean, I think that's one of those where you're like, oh, boy, the Ace. Now, did you expect Miami to get beat as badly? But guess what? Alabama says there's a lot of people that say that on Sunday morning. Man, I didn't think Alabama was going to beat them that bad. It happens a lot. I didn't think Alabama was going to beat Texas A&M like that. Well, they did. So I look at it and say, could the ACC look a little bit different? Who's to say what Florida State looks like in a couple of weeks as well? When, if they have that kind of effort they had against Notre Dame, maybe that's a different story. Are they good enough to beat Clemson? I don't know. But if Florida State is respectable, that looks a little better on the resume as well for Clemson. So I think at the end of the day, and I know BJ wanted to argue with me about this because, hey, the Big 12 and the Pac-12 looks good and this and that. And could you get 2 SEC teams in? I think at the end of the day, it's not supposed to matter, Ben. Hey, it's only supposed to matter what happens this year, but the people in the room making the decisions are human beings. Clemson's made the playoffs 6 straight years in a row.
Yep.
If they're sitting there at the end of the year with 1 loss, now I'm not saying the margin of error for Clemson is not very small. If they lose again, I think it's very tenuous. They're not getting in. But if they're sitting there 11-1, win the ACC 12-1, they're getting in. I just at the end of the day, they're going to get in.
Kevin, there are 2 teams, and really 3 teams in college football that has earned the benefit of the doubt. If you've seen it, Clemson is 1, Alabama is 2, and Ohio State is 3. Now, Kevin, the one thing you're gonna know is this: Clemson's gonna be in the ACC championship game, and they're gonna want a Virginia Tech to be in because if I just think that when you think about the ACC, people go, the ACC is bad this year. Was the ACC good last year? Were they good 2 years ago? Oh, okay. So Clemson knows we got to run through the ACC, and if our only loss is Georgia, like BJ say, it's better to have a quality loss than a quality win. Does it get a better quality loss in Georgia? I don't believe so. Clemson understands that because Kevin, you talking about you're freaking out. Fire Dabo Swinney. See, he ain't a good coach. I'm telling you, people, this is why we ain't in a position to make big time decisions, because we are frantic when it comes to our thinking. Calm down. DJ, you and those guys gonna be scoring 60 points a game from here on out. And once again, if Georgia and Clemson meet each other again, guess what? Nobody not named Alabama gonna have. Yeah, we talking like our team's gonna be in it. They won't. Your team is vying for a bowl game. I don't care. So you can quit thinking, oh, UNC was going to the college football playoff. No, they weren't. No, they were not. You can get that out. So, Miami's gonna beat Alabama. That was a storyline. That's not real. Did you see the game? They said Miami scored 14 in the 4th quarter. They was losing 40-0. Man, stop it. Stop that nonsense.
So go check it out, southernpigskin.com. You can check out the Southern Power Poll here after week 1. We've got more to come here on 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you back here, 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, Ben Troop, glad you're making us a part of your day. We'll chat with Josh Pate, the Late Kick with Josh Pate and 247 Sports. We'll start looking ahead to week 2 of college football, Ben, as we turn the page here midweek of college football. Some interesting games, I think, out there on the docket in the ACC and SEC week 2. Kentucky and Mizzou, very interesting. And I think Mississippi State and NC State, kind of an interesting matchup here in week 2 that might be too off the radar, like national high-profile games, but could mean an awful lot as we get into it here.
Yeah, and Kevin, something that I give these schedule makers a lot of credit for. They don't really wait. There used to be a time to where it took about maybe like week 3, week 4 to try to start getting into the schedule. But now week 2, you got to be ready to go. I think that Kentucky Mizzou matchup is going to be very, very intriguing when you talk about Coach Eli Drinkwitz and obviously Coach Stoops and what they're doing at both of their respective universities. With both of those guys always trying to fight for just staying relative, trying to fight for more than just because Kentucky is always going to be considered the basketball zoo. Mizzou, I mean, the fact that Mizzou is in the SEC, I mean, tells you all you need to know. But yeah, some very, very intriguing games. And Kevin, if we had to talk each other off the ledge in week 1, don't worry, that ledge is going to be very, very fresh in week 2. Let's get geared up because we are our own worst enemy when it comes to these games. But hey, week 2 matchups, I mean, should be very, very intriguing.
And again, if you played an easy game in week 1, you probably got a tougher matchup in week 2. If you played a challenging game week 1, you probably got an easier go of it. I see at LSU, McNeese State, some of things like that. But Ben, from your standpoint, before we get to Josh Pate next hour, who's got the most to prove, in your opinion? Who's got the most to prove in week 2?
It's got to be LSU, right? Because, Kevin, I mean, I understand the circumstances going on right now with the Tigers, with everything, and with the hurricane and them not being able to practice in their own facility. But you trying to get out of 2020, right? The goal of 2021 is to brush the dust off of 2020 and let that go. Well, everybody was very, very high on Max Johnson, going to the Swamp, getting a big win, but they went 5-5. So now, Kevin, when you do good, everybody focus on everything you're doing good, and when you do bad, it's, hey, this is the same LSU team that got the brakes beat off of by Mississippi State first game of the year last year, right? And that same Mississippi State team was not good the rest of the year. So LSU just getting back to what they do. I know that Max Johnson is flying across the country, going up against a very, very highly motivated UCLA team that's battling, for just respect right now in the Pac-12. So I think for me, it's LSU. Coach O, let's talking, because people love to talk and to go Tigers when y'all winning. When you're losing, you're going to have to push that stuff back. So LSU, man, get a dub, not just for yourselves, but for your confidence, because that schedule is only going to get rough moving forward.
Certainly. And again, I think you go into week 2, they play McNeese State, so that's a take care of business type game. But I think we're going to also learn about some teams. We got a minute or so left here. Tennessee and Pitt this week. How good is Josh Heupel? How with it are they after that Bowling Green game last Thursday night? I think we find out more about them before they get into SEC play there with a decent Pitt team coming to town this weekend.
Very, very impressed with Tennessee. Week 1 ran the football. Coach Heupel, I mean, some of you said, Kevin, we thought it was going to be up and down, trying to get up and down the field, but Pitt always brings the defense, always. For the last 4 or 5 years, the guys have been really, really good. So, yeah, you're going to learn a lot about Tennessee. I saw a lot of former Tennessee Vols, my homie Troy Flynn, those guys flexing a little bit. Don't lose that energy if y'all do indeed lose the game. It's fine. It has happened before in Tennessee. They're not going to go undefeated. I can guarantee you that.
All the Tennessee fans coming out of the woodwork. Is that what you're saying, Ben?
Yeah, listen, Philip Foreman, he was on Twitter saying congratulations, Tennessee. He probably didn't mean it because, they had to let him go. But no, Kevin, I mean, Tennessee, one of the old superpowers. Hopefully they can stick with their winning ways. And maybe Coach Heupel is understanding that maybe that up and down game don't really work in the SEC. Just ask Mississippi State. You're going to have to adjust. Might as well adjust starting week 1.
Certainly. And we'll chat with Josh Pate of the Late Kick with Josh Pate coming up here in the final hour of the program. We'll also look at who's a contender, who's a pretender here after one whole week of college football, maybe who's got us leaning in the wrong direction here early. We'll also look at the opening weekend of the National Football League. Falcons and Jags getting ready to open it up here on Sunday. But we'll come back. Josh Pate will join us to kick off the final hour of 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Great to be here. Final hour of 3 and Out here on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin BJ not here. Ben Troop is here on this Wednesday. We'll look at the Falcons and Jags opening up the NFL season. Falcons at home, Jags on the road at the Houston Texans. Also, who's a pretender and a contender after the first week of the college football season? Here to talk about week one and look ahead to week two, which is rapidly approaching. That's what happens when you get football every single day for a week. Week two just sneaks right up on you. Josh Pate, host of the Late Kick with Josh Pate, joins us here on 3 and Out. Josh, welcome. How are you?
I'm good. It's funny you mentioned it that way. I was just talking to one of our folks here today. But week two is the fastest approaching week in the college football season because of how many months you spent just looking at week one. And I had a Georgia buddy. I grew up in Georgia. So I had a Georgia buddy who texted me the other day and said, "You realize I didn't even know we played UAB in week two until Sunday, about mid-afternoon Sunday." That's how it works for a lot of people.
Hey, absolutely. You're so caught up in the countdown. Let's talk quickly about that Georgia Clemson game. What does that do, in your estimation, if anything, to the college football playoff picture early on here in the college football season?
I don't think it does a whole lot of anything. It removes margin for error for Clemson, so that's obvious, and it gives Georgia a little breathing room. I think the most interesting thing would be if those two were in some comparative analysis late in the year, if Georgia and Bama were to meet undefeated, and then Clemson wins the ACC title and it's them or Georgia for that fourth spot. That would be interesting to see how the committee handled it. But outside of that, I'll tell you what it did for me. It made me not even think about playoff with Clemson for a while, because I look at the rest of their schedule and I know everyone assumes they're going to go unbeaten, and they will be double-digit favorites the rest of the way. But let me tell you, when you don't have elite speed at wide receiver and you don't have at least an average offensive line, which it doesn't look like at the moment they have, that is a perfect recipe for close games that have no business being close games. I'm not predicting any one of these games they'll lose. I'm just saying that's the kind of ingredients you need in play to have all of a sudden your buddy text you and say, "Can you believe Pitt is tied with Clemson late in the third quarter?" So I don't just assume they're going to go unbeaten the rest of the way at the moment.
And Josh, even sticking with that point, how much of it when it comes to teams like a Clemson that they've just earned that benefit of the doubt? Like they lose to Georgia, and obviously Georgia meets the talent threshold, and it was just a defensive, if you love defense, you love that game. But how much does a team like Clemson, they just assume, oh, they lost to Georgia, but they just gonna run through the ACC? And sometimes some of these teams, they might not meet the talent threshold of Clemson, but they might have kind of bridged the gap here a little bit.
Well, you're right. So in our industry, I mean, we do recruiting. And so everyone follows recruiting. So everyone knows, or at least they think they know, how talented Clemson is. And I don't disagree with any of that. But I'll tell you what people are not. People are not talent evaluators in and of themselves. When someone tells you how talented a team is, you can rest assured all they're talking about is either star rankings or mock drafts. They have not done the evaluation themselves. So my thing I come back to always is, if I did not allow you to look at recruiting rankings, and all you got to do was use your eyeballs and watch the games, and I had you watch UCLA and Clemson Saturday, I'm telling you right now, a lot of folks out there could not pick the loaded roster versus the one that is loaded up 3 stars and low 4 stars, because you are absolutely right. Benefit of the doubt is in play. And that Tiger Paw, since it's parked in the top 10, top 5 every signing day, they're going to get benefit of the doubt. And it is because they got a lot of talent. But depth charts and, preview magazines don't win football games.
Josh Pate, the Late Kick with Josh Pate, joining us here on 3 and Out, and we start to look ahead to week number 2. Some interesting games. Obviously, the opening weekend, we had some great matchups. Obviously, those things are set up for TV, so we get to be fully enthralled in the opening weekend of college football. But what about week 2? Some interesting ones for me. Let's start there with a team in the SEC, Arkansas, going and taking on Texas. Texas, of course, looked good against Louisiana. Is this a better game than maybe it would appear?
I've had someone ask me that. I think it appears good. It's under a touchdown spread. It appears good to me. And it's Texas going on the road with a new offense for the first time. And that place is going to be on fire. I mean, Fayetteville will be on fire because this is not later in the year when they've lost some games. They're undefeated right now. So the whole world's in front of them. I'll tell you what to watch is KJ Jefferson's the quarterback for Arkansas. And I don't think they can get by without running him 12 to 15 times. I think that gives them the best chance to win this game. And if they are able to do that, and they're able to just clog that game up, and he falls forward on 3rd and 2 after 3rd and 2 after 3rd and 2, and all of a sudden Sarton realizes, I'm going to have 2 or 3 less possessions than I thought I would. All of a sudden that turns up the heat a little bit on a very young quarterback, a very inexperienced quarterback. to execute on the road without a whole stable of big-time playmakers. He's got one or two of them they can really lean on. So if Arkansas is able to do that, if they just make it a messy, ugly game, a mutter, if you will, that is what makes the second half really interesting.
I mean, speaking of a game that most people thought was probably going to be a different result come week one, Tennessee looked really, really good in week one running the football. But for those people who haven't had a chance to see Pittsburgh football lately, they played with they played great defense. Does Tennessee kind of come back down to earth a little bit? Maybe not necessarily get beat up, but is this going to be a harder game for Tennessee that people know, especially when Pittsburgh definitely going to bring a defensive line that's definitely going to try to shut down their run game and force Tennessee to beat them through the air?
Yeah, I'm almost glad the point spread came out the way it did here, because it's kind of a jolt. It's kind of a grab you by the shoulders and wake you up. So when you look and you know you're playing Pitt in Neyland and you're the field goal underdog, that's fascinating. I never thought I'd see that. So now that is here and that's reality, I don't think it's going to take anyone by surprise that thing's a dogfight. I don't think it'll take anyone in Tennessee by surprise if it is a massive challenge. But here's what you get the added benefit of. You get the added benefit of having all the home field trappings, and you get to also say, hey, we got nothing to lose. People don't expect us to win. Now, that's not reality. All their fan base expects them to win. But you can convince a locker room of that. It's kind of the same deal I just said, but in reverse with the Arkansas thing. You can't be letting Pitt come into your building and dictate terms to you. You need to control tempo of the game. You need to make them keep up with you. You need to make them trade points, because if you let them get you by the throat and pull you out into the deep end, I don't know if that Tennessee team knows how to swim yet. So stay out of the deep end would be my advice. And by doing that, I mean score early and get the lead and make them play your style of ball.
And Josh, this seems like we asked this to Ben earlier. I'll ask it to you here. And that Tennessee game seems like a good answer to this. But who has the most to kind of prove to you in week number 2? We saw a lot of questions about some top teams, but who's kind of a team that's sitting there in the middle that good, bad, whatever, has a lot to prove here in week number 2?
Miami. I watched the Bama-Miami game over again this morning. I've never said this before in my life, but it was 41-3, and I found myself thinking, De'Aaron King has not played a bad game at all. I mean, I think the level of play that De'Aaron King had against Alabama, even when they're down over 5 touchdowns, would have been good enough to beat some top 10 teams. That's how good Bama is. Well, having said that, you still got to get it done. So they come home this week, and the age-old adage playing Bama is they'll beat you once, don't let them beat you twice. Well, they play Appalachian State this Saturday in Miami. The spread is single digits. It's a game that every Miami Hurricane fan expects to win. It's one that you penciled in as a W all spring and summer long. Well, they've got to get it done because nothing was really lost. No one was picking Miami to go to the playoff. So they didn't lose anything by losing aside of some recruiting edges they thought they may have picked up. But they will lose a ton if they can't get it done this Saturday. Because then you got Michigan State coming in, then you got conference play. And if you can't get it done and right the ship against App State, then nothing is certain, and you're several years into Diaz's tenure there, and then it gets really shaky.
I mean, Josh, when I look at Mississippi State, NC State, I mean this is my question mark game. I know when NC State is always, they don't get that benefit of the doubt that a Clemson get, and they play really, really good football. And NC State, Mississippi State, and Coach Leach, he's still trying to show people that he's going to make the air raid work in the SEC, even though he's playing an ACC school. How do you see this one shaping out, especially with a Mississippi State team that's always going to be fighting for identity rights, especially when you're looking at the fact that people don't think that that air raid is going to work in the SEC? What do you think about this game this weekend?
Yeah, I'm one of them that has my doubts about that. I'm talking earlier to a defensive guy in the SEC, not involved in this game, but just a guy who kind of has been around the block a time or 10. And he brought this game up, and he said, "You just watch. I don't have time on a grease board to break it down for you. You wouldn't understand it if I did. Blah blah blah. But you just watch. That defensive staff at NC State is tailor-made. They know back front what Mike Leach does. They know how to defend it. If you go back and look at their history, they have defended it successfully. So I say all that to say, I'm just going to repeat what that guy said. I mean, NC State's a small favorite in Starkville, by the way, in case people haven't checked. I think NC State's going to end up beating them, and that will be one of the few lone bright spots for the ACC early on this year.
And that's obviously the storyline, Josh, going into to week number 2 is the ACC. Where do you think the reality sits with the league versus what we saw, which was obviously not good in week number 1? We obviously overreact week 1 to week 2, probably more than any other time in college football. Where does the reality sit with the ACC, though, right now as they look at themselves as a league?
Well, context of it, you're going to need this Saturday because Washington goes to Michigan and Oregon goes to Ohio State. And if those two get thumped, that's the best thing the ACC could have happen. Otherwise, you're sitting there at this point. If even Clemson's not holding up their end of the bargain against the big teams, which was the only feather you had in your cap for a long time, then what are we doing? I mean, we're talking about ACC Pac-12, which one's number 5 in the Power 5 pecking order, and you've also got that little AAC situation to worry about, the Cincinnatis of the world, the Central Floridas of the world. I don't think the profile is very good, and it's inexcusable to be in that position, by the way. But I don't think the profile of the league is good at all right now. And listen, that's a bad thing to say, but if you're Mike Norvell at Florida State, still, if you're Mack Brown at North Carolina, even though they had a setback in week 1, the door is wide open. I mean, that number 2 spot is wide open.
And Josh, I mean, even sticking with the ACC for a second, I mean, I understand, like you said, Clemson is a cash cow. It's not like the SEC. I mean, secretly don't be loving the fact that Alabama is what Alabama is because it keeps the prestige of that entire conference looking good. But does it have to be a certain team in the ACC to do it? Because I talked about NC State. You talked about Miami having something to prove. Is it because it's not the Miamis or the North Carolinas kind of leading the way behind Clemson as to why the ACC gets a bad rep? Because I understand you got good football, but does it come down to who's doing it, not that they doing it?
I think it's a little bit of both. I don't think it matters so much. I certainly think if you were to just paint the generic map, that people would expect Miami and or Florida State to be the ones that shine for obvious reasons. But it hasn't been them. And then Clemson pops up. So, you know, it wasn't until very recently, like if you're 19 or 20 years old driving around town listening to us, you've only known Clemson as a national power. If you're 35, 45, 55 years old, you've known Clemson being terrible. And so it's only been recently that brand has expanded beyond anything other than regional in scope. And now it's a national powerhouse. Well, the point is, if it can happen at Clemson, it can happen at Virginia, it can happen at North Carolina, it can happen certainly at Miami, Florida State. It's just you sit around and you keep waiting. I think Georgia Tech could have it happen. It's a little bit different formula there, but you keep on sitting around and waiting, and you watch guys from the ACC go into the NFL draft left and right, and you watch fertile recruiting grounds get plucked in ACC country left and right, and you just wonder, with every new hire they make in that conference or every new year, I wonder, is this the guy or is this the year? And so far, we're still waiting.
Josh Pate, the Late Kick with Josh Pate, our guest here on 3 and Out. Josh, really appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
All right, thanks, guys.
Josh Pate joining us here. And Ben, as we looked at some of the games we talked about with him, Pitt, Tennessee, as he said, Pitt, a favorite in Neyland Stadium. I think they call this the Johnny Majors Classic. It's Johnny Majors coached both of these teams. But to me, this is a show-me game for Tennessee. Not necessarily that they're contenders in the SEC right now, but I think if you're Josh Heupel, you walked into a mess of a situation, guys transferring out of the program left and right. Okay, you got an opening week win. That was kind of expected to happen. Now you got to do it against a solid team from the ACC who had a horrible week. And I think you can there's no way to sugarcoat that. But I think Pitt is one of those teams that, as you said, may not be the flashiest, may not come in there with the best defense or offense in college football, but defensively, they've made a lot of hay year in and year out playing good defense. And if you go, I think this is one where if they get you off the field 3 and out with that offense, we'll find out how deep Tennessee is defensively, because that's something they didn't have to do in week 1. They didn't have to sit there and just play defense all night long because their offense couldn't put a drive together. Even when they weren't scoring in the first half, it was still 5, 6, 7 plays, eating up a couple of minutes here and there when they didn't score. If you can't do that against Pitt and that defense has to play all game, it could be an interesting afternoon there for the Vols.
Absolutely. Pitt is definitely going to try to dictate tempo, and I think it's something you said, Kevin. You start a bunch of 3. Pitt's defense, it's kind of like Doak Campbell Stadium. If you wake those guys up, it's going to be a long day. Pitt plays good D, and you know that Tennessee wants to run the football. We don't know how good Tennessee is throwing the football. Pitt is going to test them. Hey, man, we're going to have a better shot forcing them to be one-dimensional, and we're going to see how good they are. The thing about Heupel that he's going to realize here quick, they're waiting. You won week 1, but it was against Bowling Green. So now it's not that they won. They played Bowling Green. So now they shooing Bowling Green. Well, Pitt is not going to be no walk in the park. Pitt is not a walk in the park for anybody that plays them. So yes, Kevin, the Pitt Panthers they're going to show us a lot about the Tennessee Vols. And Kevin, you know, just like I know, if Tennessee lays an egg and loses, the Boo Birds are waiting to come out to say, see, should have never hired this guy. These dudes aren't there. You know how it is. It's 1 week you to go, and next week, well,
I think this is just a matter. I think it's just a matter of how quick that offense can go, and if they go up tempo and have success, it really looks good. I remember watching them at Central Florida, and it was like on the ball snap. It was very, very fast. But if you go 3 and out, you could be talking about a 30-second possession and giving the ball back to the opposing team. In this case, it is Pitt. We got so much more to get to. Speaking of games, and we don't have time to talk about it right now, but Miami, App State, yikes. That is a scary game for Miami coming off Alabama, because this is a game you very well could lose because App State is very, very good. But we'll get to that later in the week. We've still got plenty to get to. Look at the Falcons and the Jags. NFL is back. Looking forward to that. Falcons, hey, it'll be our first time seeing Matt Ryan this whole time. No preseason. We'll be first time we get to see him here in 2021. He runs out for the first possession of the Falcons opener. We'll talk about that. Who's a contender and a pretender after week 1 in college football and more. So don't go anywhere. It's 3 and Out on this Wednesday afternoon, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network, streaming live, ESPNCoastal.com. Love to hear from you on Twitter as well, at Pigskin Radio. Welcome back. It's 3 and Out here on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, Ben Troop. Glad you are with us here on the show. NFL getting started this weekend for real. Falcons and Jags both kicking it off. Falcons hosting the Eagles, Jags at the Texans. Let's start there with the Falcons. Ben, we've talked a lot about this. Preseason ended last week. We've had a whole kind of week of college football with no pro football. We talked a lot about this in the preseason. No Matt Ryan, Mike Davis, some key guys have yet to play. How comfortable do you feel with them now going into week one, albeit at home, against the Philadelphia Eagles?
You're going to learn a lot about him, Kevin, when you think about an offense that I understand Arthur Smith was probably, error on the side of caution, saying, okay, when I'm looking at the preseason, I know this is more about these young guys getting reps, but I still hadn't seen this starting offense out there all at the same time. Philadelphia, if they can't do nothing else, they got premier pass rushes, definitely at the interior defensive lineman. But I just think that it's gonna be some kinks being worked out with everybody. I do think it's gonna be a good test because Jalen Hurts is a starting quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't know if anybody's afraid of him. And I think Gardner Minshew got traded over there to the Eagles. But I'm excited to see, Kyle Pitts and Ridley and Gage and Hayden Hurst and Mike Davis and those guys out there together. But with all the skill positions, it comes back down to the offensive line. How is this offensive line going to look? Are they going to keep Matty Ice upright? Or is going to be more 50-50 pass to run or however you're going to do it? But all in all, man, the live bullets, they about to jump off come Sunday. We're going to learn a lot about both teams. But if you are Atlanta, one, who can rush the passer? Two, is this young secondary ready? And how do they protect Matty Ice? If they can answer all those questions, I think they got a good shot of coming out victorious against the Eagles.
And Ben, how do you look at the situation with the Falcons? Obviously, they played it close to the vest with certain guys on the offensive side. Is that to kind of play the cards for Arthur Smith kind of close to the vest, i.e. the Eagles? You don't even have preseason book really on what I want to do with my regular collection of guys, the schemes we want to run, or is all that like, hey, the scheme's the scheme, whatever you're running with backups is probably what you're going to run with Matt Ryan, et cetera out there?
No, I think Arthur Smith kept it smart. He was saying, look, as long as I got Matty Ice to run his offense, he's going to make sure the offensive line is lined up right. He's going to make sure the guys are getting the calls. He's going to keep the pressure and accountability on guys like Kyle Pitts, who is the prize rookie. And I think sometimes when you got a veteran like Matty Ice, we don't give him enough credit for how he's out there making sure that he's directing traffic. He's making sure that guys are where they're supposed to be. Really is a bona fide number one. Gage is the number two. How you gonna use that 12 personnel with Hurst and Kyle Pitts? But because you got Matty Ice, it's probably why you didn't have to really put him out there. And you had inter squad scrimmages, so you got to see some really, really good work from other teams. But it don't matter until it matters. And now it does. And I do think that Matty Ice is going to go through some growing pains with an offense that we haven't seen yet. But Arthur Smith better hope this works. Because you already know, Kevin, the Falcon faithful, they're already wishy-washy when it comes to rooting for the Falcons already. So if it looks good early, they're gonna clap, they're gonna say bravo. But if it doesn't, they're gonna blame it on Arthur Smith more because it's cool until it works, and when it doesn't work, it's because they didn't get enough reps. But that's why they go out there and play, and we'll see what happens Sunday.
Yeah, again, I think that's you're right, Ben. I 100% agree because there'll be folks like me who's like, if it comes out and the offense looks clunky and it's the fourth quarter and this Falcons offense has scored 3 points or 7 points and that's it, people say, look, that's why these guys should have played in the preseason. I would be one of them, probably saying that, at least play a little bit. And if it comes out and looks great, then we will all, of course, say, maybe Arthur Smith was a genius and knew something the rest of us didn't know in that situation. But what do you realistically expect? Game one, Arthur Smith, new regime against an Eagles team that's pretty solid. I think they'll be pretty solid, so a good test right out of the box. What do you expect to see coming up on Sunday?
A little bit more of what we've grown to see with Atlanta. Mike Davis can't be when you talk about the running game, if Mike Davis is the answer and you've had guys like Ty Gurley, Devonta Smith, and those guys, and they weren't able to do it, I think it's going to be more of Matty Ice trying to beat these guys through the air. And I know that Philadelphia is going to be licking their chops. Darius Slay, he's going to be mirroring Calvin Ridley. So you're going to have a guy, right from our neck of the woods mirroring the number one receiver. How are you going to use Kyle Pitts? Not that you're going to use him. How are you going to use him? I'm talking about in the red zone. Obviously, the young man is uniquely gifted with what he brings to the table, but he's very, very light. He's not the biggest guy you've ever seen, a little bit over 240 pounds at 6'6". You know what he does in the passing game. Do you utilize him in the run game? Is this defense ready to play complementary football? I'm not saying you got to be the 2000, Ravens or 2002 Tampa Bay Bucks, but you also can't be the 2020 Atlanta Falcons. You can't look like that. So it's always going to come back to Matty Ice in the passing game. How to use Kyle Pitts, and is this defense ready to get off the field on third down, force some turnovers, and give some more opportunities back to Matty Ice in that offense?
Certainly. Again, we look over Jacksonville in an interesting opener. That's a divisional game at Houston coming up on Sunday. Of course, we know Travis Etienne unfortunately out for the season. It is the Trevor Lawrence debut. Does he keep that streak of not losing in the regular season alive, Ben? Here, I mean, this is an interesting matchup because obviously no Deshaun Watson there in Houston right now. Trevor Lawrence first NFL start. What do you think we see on Sunday? Is it the same old disastrous Jacksonville Jaguars when the lights come on, or is Urban Meyer, Trevor Lawrence actually got something going in the right direction here?
I think you're going to see some flashes. I do think that Trevor Lawrence is good enough to go out there and get this offense moving in the right direction. He has built a nice rapport with Laviska Shenault and those guys, DJ Chark and those guys. I think that James Robinson is going to have a really, really big role in the running game because that's what you the greatest thing a young quarterback needs is a solid running game. But just like I said about Atlanta, what type of offensive line does Jacksonville have? It's more retooled, and if you saw, Trevor Lawrence very, very first play from scrimmage, he got sacked, and it was a sack fumble. That was his very, very first play, when he ran out there. But they got a good a shot as any against Houston. Tyrod Taylor has been named the starter. I don't know what's going on with Deshaun Watson up there with Houston right now. I think it's really hurting his trade equity when you look at the fact that people just don't know. Tyrod Taylor has been on a lot of teams. He's a really, really good player. He's not going to do too much. He's not going to turn the ball over. Going to keep you ahead of the chains. So if Jacksonville want to get up to a good start, this is going to be as good a chance as any. But once again, I don't know how good Jacksonville defense is. They got a lot of big names. I mean, they got Josh Smith and they got, Chase on those guys, but I just don't know how good Jacksonville defense should be. A more entertaining game than we give it credit for because Texans are going to play some inspired football. And I know it's about this prize rookie named Trevor Lawrence, but if Trevor Lawrence have it, he's going to lose a regular season game. Guaranteed. This year, Kevin, you just don't want it to be game one, but it should be an entertaining game because whenever you start off inside your conference, it always makes the game better.
Yeah, and again, game number one for Trevor Lawrence, rookie quarterback. I don't even care if he's the number one overall pick, Ben. As you look at it, what is a reasonable expectation for Trevor Lawrence making his first NFL start? If he does X, you'll come in on Monday and say, yeah, that was solid. That was pretty good.
If he doesn't turn the ball over. Because turnovers are so hard to overcome in the National Football League because guys usually turn those turnovers into points. So if he can just not throw the ball to the other team, not fumble the football, he's gonna make some rookie mistakes. And if he understands if it's not there, just throw it away. Don't trust your arm. These are NFL DBs. They want you to think that you can fit that ball in there. That ain't T. Higgins over there you throwing to. That ain't Justin Ross you throwing to. I like Chark and I like Chase. I like Laviska Shenault and them. But if he doesn't turn the ball over, if he just trusts the scheme, if he dumps the ball down to James Robinson and just throws it away on third down, they got a really, really good shot to win because you want to be a rookie, Kevin, but unfortunately you don't want to look like a rookie because that's what the defense is hoping you are.
Yeah, easier said than done there for Trevor Lawrence. I mean, obviously when you're the number one pick, Ben, you're going to a bad team. And you look at the Peyton Mannings and all these guys that are coming in as top 3, 4, 5 pick. I mean, you're going to a team that was picking you number one for a reason. Obviously, I mean, I guess it seems to be easier said than done to say don't turn the ball over in your debut. And we've seen some rookie quarterbacks the last few years come in, and they look like rookie quarterbacks. They're going to make some things that some plays that just don't make sense.
Yeah, and unfortunately for Trevor Lawrence, we expect these number one overall picks to come in and produce like right away. You expect, a Baker Mayfield type resurgence. Like, hey man, you already the guy, so get us to the promised land. You seeing what guys like Josh Allen's doing for Buffalo. And the jury's still out on Tua, but you look at what Patrick Mahomes is doing for Kansas City, what Lamar Jackson is doing. Maybe they want him to have a Justin Herbert type season stats wise, but I don't see them winning a lot of games because Trevor Lawrence can boost the reputation of an organization. I mean, but at the same time, he's only one guy. So I expect him to go out there and make some throws that wow you. But I also expect him to do some things that make you scratch your head and go, "What was that?" Because sometimes, Kevin, the only way you're gonna learn about the game of football is to get out there and do it. It is it is not. It is very, very humbling. Sometimes you're the hammer, sometimes you're the nail. But I think that Trevor Lawrence is gonna be fine. You saw him, you saw him in the preseason. He can make some throws, man. But he got to have that clock in his head because one thing about it, he's 6'6". He's standing there and like a statue, and that defensive line wants nothing more but to get his behind out the game.
Yeah, we'll see what happens here on Sunday afternoon. Eagles at Falcons, 1 o'clock. Jaguars at Texans, also at 1 o'clock. We've got more to come here on 3 and Out after the first week of college football. Ben, we'll look at pretenders and contenders. Why wouldn't we do that here after only one game? We'll do that next. Here 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Welcome back. It's 3 and Out here on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, Ben Troop, glad you are with us here. Of course, Ben, we like to overreact after 1 week, so that's what we're going to do now. We're going to, hey, who is a pretender or a contender here after week 1? Teams that can or maybe can't take down the top team in their conference. So I'll give you a team, and you kind of lay it on me if you think they're a contender or a pretender. Let's talk about Ole Miss. Their big win on Monday night over Louisville. Is Ole Miss a contender or are they a pretender?
They're a pretender. They're a really, really good pretender, though. I mean, they really, really good. But the thing about Ole Miss, second year with Lane Kiffin, same result. They're gonna have to try to outscore teams because I don't know how good that defense is. So they're gonna put points on the board. But the problem is, can you keep another team like Alabama from keep? So for me, I'm gonna say no. I mean, Alabama's had 1 year to see what Lane Kiffin wants to do. Matt Corral is a very, very good quarterback. Might be the best quarterback not named Bryce Young in the division, but pretender, they're not going to beat Alabama.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat with you as a pretender. That Louisville team, it looked good by people who don't follow the ACC. Louisville was picked down near the bottom of the ACC Atlantic Division. So they kind of beat up on a team that was not expected to do a whole lot here in 2021. What about Texas A&M? They kind of got off to a slow start in the first 3 quarters or so. They finished strong in their opener. Contender or pretender?
I'm going to say pretender only because, I like Haynes King, but he had 2 touchdowns. But the problem is he had 3 picks. He had 3 picks in the first game. And by the time you play Alabama, they're going to be that schemes you up. They know what he does and doesn't do well. Now, that offense looked good. And Texas A&M got a really, really good team. They got probably the best team top to bottom. But I just think that a brand new quarterback is going to beat Alabama. I'm going to say no. So I'm going to say pretender.
So no rookie quarterback there beating Alabama. What about in the same state as Alabama? Auburn, are they a pretender or a contender? I know you really like the way they came out in week 1.
I'm going to go contender, Kevin, because the thing is, Bo Nix has already beat Alabama. This is his 3rd year. And the thing about Auburn was, what was Bo Nix going to look like? Bo Nix looked very, very efficient. I think he was 20 or 22, didn't turn the ball over. Oh, and that's right. And they still got a run game. Derek Mason might be the biggest off-season acquisition you could get at D coordinator for Auburn. So for me, because Bo Nix has done it before, they gave him a new head coach, they gave him a new offensive coordinator, they gave him a defense, they got Tank Bigsby, and he's already done it. So I'm going to go contender for those boys and all.
I'm going to say pretender right now. I mean, I know they look good, but it was Akron in week number 1. I will withhold judgment until they do something a little farther into the season. What about your Florida Gators, Ben?
I'm only gonna say contender right now, Kevin, because they can run the football. It's not because of the quarterback position, because Emory Jones didn't look the part. I know Mr. Anthony Richards and Mr. AR-15 himself was out there doing things, running the ball, but the problem is you got receivers. Now Florida didn't run for 400, but you did against FAU. You got USF this week. They got the brakes beat off them by South Carolina week 1. So I'm gonna say contender because they got the run game going. But but a couple of weeks from now, Kevin, we gonna really see if these guys can play, because Alabama's coming to town. But for 1 week, I'll go contender, because in order to be able to beat the best, you got to be able to reestablish a new line of scrimmage, and Florida was able to do that in week 1.
I will say contender with that same guideline of that. We'll find out in a couple weeks when Alabama comes rolling in on the schedule. What about Kentucky? Kentucky, are they a contender or a pretender?
Man, just like what I felt about Ole Miss, they're a pretender, but they look really, really good. Mr. Will Levis looked good. 367 yards, 4 touchdowns. Kentucky's going to play good defense, and they was balanced and running the football. But Kentucky's going to have to do it on a consistent level. In the last 41 years, Kentucky has beaten Florida 1 time. They've beaten Georgia, 2 or 3 times. It's not something they're used to doing. They got a passing game, but I always got to judge them when they're going to go up against teams that are better than them. So like what I saw in week 1, but I still say pretender. I still think they're on the outside looking in.
Absolutely. I think Kentucky's still pretender, even though they're much improved. What about NC State coming up? Contender or pretender?
For 1 week, I'm going to say contender because of what I didn't see from Clemson. Now, I know Clemson's going to be a different team by the time they play NC State. But NC State is always going to be that team, Kevin, that we never, ever going to give them enough pub because it's NC State. Not because of how they play, because of who they are. Like, that's NC State. They're good, but how good are they? Now, we're going to learn a lot about them. Syracuse got to see what it's like to beat Clemson not too many years back. If North Carolina don't run a freaking option, they got a chance to beat. So I think with NC State, they might have the best team top to bottom, offensively and defensively, not named Clemson. So for 1 week, I'll say the contenders.
Yeah, and speaking of North Carolina, I think NC State. I want to say they're a contender, but no, I'm going to say they're still a pretender because I think they haven't shown up consistently in a big moment. Some of the other teams, hey, we've played Clemson close. I think you got to at least do that before you're going to sell me on, hey, we're really close to being a contender. I want to say pretender with NC State. North Carolina, again, I shouldn't say a bad loss. It was a tough game on the road. They did not play well against Virginia Tech. Are they a contender or are they a pretender?
They're pretenders. Sam Howell, while he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country, definitely going to be a top round pick. He showed what his biggest Achilles heel is, and that's throwing the ball to the other team in the most inopportune times you're going to see. I mean, Sam Howell's a good quarterback. He really, really is. He's done some incredible things. If BJ was on here, BJ going inside the numbers. But that market correction already happened in week 1 against Virginia Tech. And it wasn't even a game really top to bottom. He threw a pick at the worst time. And if that's against Virginia Tech, and you know by the time you play Clemson, if you do meet them in Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte again, you ain't gonna have a Georgia defense. You're gonna have a North Carolina defense, and it will get ugly. I'm gonna go pretend.
Again, these ACC teams we're hitting now, very, very interesting. I'm going to say pretender as well. I don't know that they might win the Coastal still, but I don't think they've got what it takes to beat Clemson just yet. What about Miami? Another team that was kind of they were humbled by Alabama. I think there's a lot of teams, Ben, that are going to have that happen to them, quite frankly, throughout the course of the season. Absolutely humbled by Alabama. Is Miami a contender or a pretender in the ACC?
I want to say contender, but the thing about it is, Kevin, when I look at Miami as a whole, Miami, what you say, a lot of sizzle, no steak. Like they got some names, they got some big time names that can go out there and get it done, but they underperform. Even though I'm not to take it back to last year, I watched they. Miami team get embarrassed by North Carolina at home, and I know that Alabama is the standard. You kind of got to throw that game out, but like I said, if Miami meets Clemson, man, you're gonna get a very, very disrespected Clemson team that people think they ain't good. So I'm gonna go pretender because while I like De'Aaron King and his cast of characters, I don't think those guys are built for prime time right now.
Yeah, I'm going to say pretender on Miami until they prove me otherwise, right? I mean, how long have we said in the ACC, oh, man, if Miami can get back, Miami can get back, Miami can bet. Well, they've been in the ACC a long time now, Ben, and they've been to one ACC championship game, one. So I'm going to say pretender until they prove me otherwise in that scenario. And finally, this was going to be an interesting one because I don't think a lot of people were expecting it in week 1. Can it continue? That is Virginia Tech. Are they a contender or a pretender?
Man, you said it too, Kevin. I'm gonna go pretender because they beat North Carolina, but the thing about Virginia Tech is Virginia Tech has that they're good enough to beat anybody they play against, and they're good enough to lose to anybody they play against. So I like what they was able to do week 1. I think when you got a whole off season to play for one team and you had them at home, the Sandman came out, everything, all the stars aligned. But are they ready to contend with Clemson? I'm gonna say no. I think Virginia Tech is gonna be a good team this year. I think this entire ACC is gonna be all over the place, but are they ready to play with them boys? I'm gonna say pretenders.
I look at Virginia Tech and I feel like they could be a pretender, but that seems like one of those that we may look back 3 or 4 weeks from now and say, how did that happen? Or is this the same Virginia Tech team that we saw in week number 1? I'm going to say pretender at this point with the full clarification out there that I feel like I could be very wrong, but that seemed like one out of the gate that caught a lot of people by surprise. I'm going to say pretender now for Virginia Tech here early on in the season. So week 1, contender, pretender, had a little fun doing that there with Ben. We'll come back. We'll put a wrap on this one, get you ready for Braves and Nationals. Once again, Braves trying to go out there and win, push that lead up to 2.5 last night. See if they can add on to it tonight. We'll get to that when we return. This is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network on this Wednesday afternoon. get down towards the Braves and the Nationals. Touki Toussaint getting the start tonight for the Braves. Braves get it done last night. Big win, extend their lead in the East to 2.5. So things were getting tight there. Hopefully they calm down here in the coming weeks. But the Phillies, the rest of the way, a little bit easier schedule than the Braves. Braves got a big West Coast swing coming up still to play that might cause them some problems. We'll have to wait and see. But 2.5, Braves playing well. Guys continuing to hammer the baseball bin, and a good night last night against a Nationals team that, again, I don't think any professional player is going to just quit, but obviously this is a team that knows 15.5 games out with about 20 some odd games to go. They're not making the postseason, and are trying to play out the string, and maybe some of them playing for contract extensions, things of that nature. But you got a team while they're down last night, and you needed to do it.
Yeah, the Braves show why the Braves look like the tops in the NL East last night, and you mentioned, Kevin. I mean, this Nationals team they're always going to be a head scratcher, right? I mean, they got big names, but they're not really getting that production. And sometimes, the one thing that scared me about the Braves is kind of going away now. I didn't want the Braves to play down to lesser competition. Sometimes lesser competition might not be talent wise. It might be, it might be record wise when you look at what the Nationals, have right now. But very, very impressed by these bats. I mean, when the bats are, as hot as they are, all you got to do as a pitcher and a pitcher staff and the closers is not mess this thing up. And that's kind of what makes the Braves so intriguing, Kevin, is you always know these bats, listen, they can match with the best of them. You might not have the best pitcher, going into every single game, depending on who you're going up against. But these guys can leave the yard, and they can leave the yard in a hurry. I was very, very impressed because what would have worried me, Kevin, if it would have went the other way. You got a team that had nothing to play for outside of pride with the Nationals. And if they would have made it a game, that would have been a head scratcher. But, yeah, they get a big win last night. And I think now something you said, Kevin, is keeping – listen, man, to put some distance between you and them Phillies because, they coming. The Braves went from chasing the Mets to catching the Mets and the Phillies. Now the Phillies are chasing them, and it's gonna be a race to the finish. Because, like I said, when you start thinking about wild card, I don't think that's on the Braves' mind. All Alex Anthopoulos and Snit know it's winning the NL East. Ronald Acuna, no Ronald Acuna. Mike Soroka, no Mike Soroka. They trying to stick to their winning way.
Yeah, I think you want to come down to it. They play the Phillies late in the season. You don't want it to come down to, hey, do the Phillies have a chance to take it from us? I think you play the Phillies 3 games, and then you finish the season with the Mets. So I don't want to play the Phillies in late September and have a 3-game lead where a sweep, all of a sudden, it's a different story. I'm selfish. I don't want it to be like that coming down the stretch. I want it to be kind of wrapped up there towards the end of the season. We'll have the Braves and the Nationals coming your way here in just a little bit. Touki Toussaint on the hill for the Atlanta Braves tonight. Appreciate Josh Pate joining us here in the final hour of the show. If you miss any of the show, go to ESPNCoastal.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube page.